All right. Can you all see us now? Yes, no. Aha, we've got a thumbs up, so somebody's alive.
There we go. Although the title has gone back to Yuri Explains about the voting in Georgia.
Oh, well, whatever. We'll fix that later. Now, you're on a really small little screen. I don't know if everybody can see you sort of properly, because you're kind of, and I can't see any comments. Ah, video good. All right. No. The other way was good. Now you're
Okay.
sideways. Video good.
It probably determines the orientation once the call starts.
Yeah, I guess. Do you wanna change it? Or?
People are not here to see my beautiful face.
Well, you never know. There could be some hussy out there trying to, make a monk become a sinner. It's known to have happened. Okay, so fade level, no, green screen. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that there's the brightness. That's what I wanted. Okay. Well, there's 12 of them here. Now, the original screen capture thing that I had was a Car Wars. Well, it was actually of a magazine that talks about Car Wars and other gaming stuff. Exactly. You see, you've already got your fans here saying they want to see your face and your beard. So as usual, we've got a very structured talk. I think we said last time that we should limit it to 5 minutes each on a topic. So I think I'm going to have to time us. And here you go. Start your 5 minutes on whichever role-playing game you fancy the most. Guys, you got to keep the questions coming. If you know what role-playing games are, we're talking about the paper, pencil, pen, and funny shit dice. Yeah, dice and imagination. Those are the best role-playing games, and I actually want my kids to play those rather than computer games down the line when they start to be able to read and stuff. Because I think they're very educational. But yeah, floor is yours for 5 minutes. I'm just gonna time it.
No, my personal favorite is actually D&D second edition. Well, Advanced Dungeon. I mean,
yeah.
The naming scheme is very 80s, but Advanced Second Edition, that's my personal favorite, mostly because it's the one I played the most.
Yeah. Did you play the original Dungeons and Dragons?
I played mostly in high school and in yeshiva, just before my military service started, such as it was.
Right, but did you play the original Dungeons and Dragons, or did you only play the sort of second edition?
I had Advanced First Edition in Hebrew, actually.
Okay.
From the library, but they only had the player's handbook.
Yeah.
You know, the white, pink, and red one with the dragon on the front cover. So we only had that. Yeah. And it was back when the elf was a class on its own.
Yes.
And the non-humans were called demi-humans.
Yeah.
So that's the very first D&D I played, but I didn't play for very long.
Yeah, if you only had that, then it makes sense that you would rather play one of the advanced ones.
Yeah, and the thing is, Israel is very much. We just didn't get a lot of that stuff. It's like.
It was like. I think Gary Gygax was on record as saying that, like, he printed this book and then it became like a black hole that you could never fill. They could never print enough. All the people I knew that we played with, we all had photocopies. Like, one guy had one book and then everybody photocopied it, and we all had. Like, my parents had a photocopier at the office, and so did the guy that first introduced me. In fact, his parents ran like a sort of a stationery shop. So they had all sorts of machines, and he just printed shitloads for his friends and whatever. So that we all had photocopies. And actually, my first introduction to it was with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the first edition. and that's the one we played the most. It was only later that I found the rules cyclopedia, which has got all the rules of the basic set and the expert set and all compiled into one, and that is awesome because that game is actually. You see, one thing that we not soon, but it took us a while, but then we sort of bumped up against the whole alignment problem, because in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons you've got 4 axes. You've got neutral, chaotic, lawful, and then you've got evil and good. So, it becomes neutral evil, lawful evil, all that stuff. While in the original basic Dungeons and Dragons, you've only got lawful, chaotic, and neutral.
Yeah, and in the original one, it was an explicit alignment with cosmic forces.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of your personal moral compass or anything like that.
Yeah, whether you're good or bad was like up to you. You had a lot more flexibility. You were more more 3-dimensional, I would say.
Okay, so I actually, you've actually taken like 2 of my 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, I have indeed. Go on. Taken 3 of your 5.
So in retrospect, now I've also played a lot of a slightly newer iteration of Dungeons and Dragons, which is 3rd edition. Third edition isn't bad. It's not. No, the really bad editions of Dungeons and Dragons are 4th and 5th. Those are honestly heretical.
I don't even know what they look like. I refuse to have anything to do with them.
We might degenerate into talking about them, mostly in expletives. But the thing in retrospect, what I really like about 2nd edition is that it fundamentally gatekeeps. Because of things like THAC0 and that your saving throws, or you have to trace them on a chart according to your level and class.
Yeah.
And if you're multi-class, demi-human, then it gets really funny at that point. All of those things meant that you had to use your brain a bit in order to play the game.
Yeah.
And it meant that a lot of the current shrieking masses just couldn't get into the game, because you actually had to be able, to do simple addition in your brain without using your fingers.
You see, I found that to me is just mechanics, and we were all good. Like, we were all, pretty quick, because once you know those tables, after you've played enough, you know them off by heart. So you know exactly what your saving throws and everything. You don't even have to look it up. But the thing that really, the reason I preferred basic Dungeons and Dragons is because of that. First of all, you had the moral flexibility, which was, like the way we originally played. Also, maybe we were young or whatever, but like a paladin in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, that was it. You like veer a little bit off, you do something a bit dodgy, and it's like, oh, you've got to start alignment, change, drift, and you've got all sorts of punishings going on, and and it was like, oh man, nobody ever wanted to play a paladin. It was just like, no, that class is just too much of a pain in the ass. And when we had like, with modules that were set, I remember once I got assigned like Vault of the Drow. I got assigned the paladin just because his name was Philotomy Jurament. So it was like, that's you, it's got your name. So it was like, okay. But what I liked about the game really was the use of your imagination. Because like, whether it was a module or whether it was your dungeon master, they'll put you in situations that were just impossible to get out of. And then we would find a way out of it, because we know kind of, as you said, we'd know the rules. But we'd also be like, but there's a gap in that rule, and what can we do with that? So like, oil flasks became like little fire bombs, essentially, because, well, Molotov cocktail, oil is flammable, I can put a little cloth in it, why not? And it sort of works. So, there was a lot of stuff like that. It's not necessarily in the rules. There are rules for fire, falling, all that stuff, and then we would generate, something that, so that's what I enjoyed about it. But again, I've taken up 4 of your 5 minutes, so.
I personally, I actually haven't been a player of D&D until I was like 29 or something like that. I was always the dungeon master.
Oh.
So for me, it always was a I always came at it from the side of, building dungeons, world building, encounter building, balance design. I always came at it from that
Yeah,
perspective,
yeah.
since I mean, I honestly never actually played, more. I never actually played even part of a module
Oh, that's sad.
before I was like 29.
Oh, that's a bit
I was
tragic.
always the dungeon master. So
Well, no,
that's my perspective.
we had a guy that usually was the dungeon master, but the thing is, whenever he actually played as a player, when somebody else DM'd and he played, he was so obnoxious and irritating that people just wanted to kill him. He was just like, "What? No, you're just being an idiot." And he would try and do like this little gamma lawyering that was like, "No, you don't get to do that shit. None of us get to do that shit either. It's just that's stupid."
Nothing ruins a good game faster than a rules lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. But let me tell you about this guy. When you're talking about balance and design, since you were a dungeon master, you'll be able to relate to this. Now, I thought this dungeon master was a little bit unfair. He was one of those guys that would like sometimes he'd give you like a really easy run, and then he'd like get into his thing that like I don't know if he was jealous of the players or what, but he'd just try and kill you. So this is a module that I played. Now you tell me when I'm done if you think that this was a little bit over the top. I think it was called, I can't remember if it was Keep on the Borderlands or no, something Monster Hill. I can't remember. It had a green cover anyway. Now, this is a module for like players of one to third level, and you're supposed to have a team of about 6 to 8 players. For whatever reason, I don't know why, it was just me and him. So it was like, we're going to do it like a solo adventure. And I'm like, okay, but I'm figuring he's going to balance it out, right? I mean, shit, it's a game for like 6 to 8 guys. I'm just on my own. All right, let's start the game. So I roll up a character, made a plain fighter. How does the module start? He wakes up naked, with no weapons, armor, or anything else inside the dungeon. And the first thing that happens is he just like wakes up because a noise wakes him up, and it's like he doesn't know how he got there. He's got no memory of how he got there. Naked, alone, no weapons, nothing around him that he can use as a weapon. And the first thing that he encounters is a ghoul, which he's a first level character with like 8 hit points or 10 or whatever it was. And a ghoul, if it hits you once, you're basically paralyzed, and then it's going to eat your brain. So I was like, what the fuck? So I quickly looked up the rules for like hand-to-hand fighting, which I think he picked as an expert. Like you had like in the rules encyclopedia, you've got slots for skills.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, I don't know why, because you never get to use it in Dungeons & Dragons. I picked like, no, he's an expert striker or puncher or whatever it was. So like, well, I'm gonna punch this ghoul and try and knock it out. And I did.
I think you need silver weapons to harm them.
Well, but that's the thing. Yes, you do. But there is no rule that says a ghoul can't be knocked unconscious. So that's what I was hanging on. I was like, yes, but he's an undead. And I'm like, so what? Still has a brain in there somehow, How do you know that an undead can't be knocked unconscious? So there was nothing about it.
That was codified in second edition.
Oh yeah. So what they can
like undead are immune to like sleep, charm, what's called subdual damage actually came in third edition.
There you go, because I think this falls under subdual damage. I know that we're immune to sleep and stuff like that, but this was like what's the point? Anyway, he rolled like a 19 or whatever, scored enough to like knock this ghoul out after punching him 3 or 4 times in the head without getting hit once, with like an armor class of 9 plus dexterity, whatever it was. I was like, what the fuck? How is this a beginning of a... Then he gets into a room and he finds a rusty shield and a bit of armor, some dead bodies, so he starts to pillage the dead bodies for armor and bits, and eventually he's kind of equipped, meets another couple of ghouls, and it's like, now he's got a sword that was like a +1, so it was just enough to like, be able to kill them. But again, he had like such raggedy luck. He managed to roll enough to escape this dungeon, get in a boat, survived all sorts of weird shit, manages to get into this boat that was some weird escape from this dungeon, and trying to make his way to the city. That was the adventure. It was basically survive, never mind treasure and all that shit. It was like, get the hell out of here and find civilization. So by this time he'd found the bow, some arrows, some weird stuff, He's in this little boat, and he gets to, there's like a huge river, and he's only got a little canoe, and the current's really strong. So he's like, no, shit, I'm not going to put this little canoe in this big river, because otherwise I'm just going to get carried away. And I can see the little town, it's just over I can see there's like, they've got walls, and there's guys on the walls. Okay, so I've got a bit of parchment. I write on the parchment, please come help me out, whatever, little note, tie it to an arrow, and shoot my arrow. And the guy goes, what are you aiming at? I'm like, I aim at a guard. It was like so far away, there's like no chance I'm going to hit it. It was like at the extreme range of the longbow, and I had no special, it wasn't special arrow or anything. Rolled a 20. Oops. Hits the guard. How bad is it? Rolls another 20. Instant death. Hit him in the eyeball. Dunk. Like, oh fuck! So I'm like, oh shit, that's bad. Quickly scribble another note. I'm really sorry, that was an accident. I didn't mean to hit your guy. Shoot another arrow. What do you aim at? The guard next to him? Guess what I rolled? Another 20. So this guard didn't die. But for whatever mysterious reason, they did not manage to read the messages after that. They didn't bother with that. They just sent out a party of like charged, armored guys. And I was like, shit, and they're shooting arrows at me now. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to get into that river after all. Jumps into the river. Oh, by the way, that's it. It wasn't a sword. It was a mace. I had a +1 mace. That was the only like magical thing I had. I just remembered now because of what happens next. So I quickly get in the canoe, and I'm like, haha, it was a strong current. You did say it at the beginning. So even though I've got a shitty paddle, I'm like getting out of range of their... Yeah, I got out of range. Yeah, you did. Now, roll random encounter. And what does he roll? And does he balance this out for first level character? No, he rolls a Hydra. I'm like, what the fuck? He's like, yep, it's a Hydra, 7-headed Hydra.
Aquatic creatures.
So again, I asked, wait, what if I hit the Hydra in the body instead of the heads? If I hit the Hydra in the body and I kill all its hit points, then do we agree that that would kill it off, even if I don't whack all the heads? And, thinking it's a Hydra, full hit points, this guy's like a wounded first level fighter. Yeah, what the hell? Okay, we'll accept that. So ran into it with the little canoe, right on the edge of it, and whack it with my +1 mace. While I got bit by one of the heads, but survived to like 1 hit point. The other ones all missed for some, again, he had like shitty rolls. And this was the D20 I used all the time. It wasn't a roll, fixed D20 or anything. Roll the 20. Okay, good. It's a good hit. Roll what kind of critical hit it is. Rolled another 20. Okay. And then to see if it's, rolled another 20. Because he was like, no, you can't kill a Hydra with 1 mace shot just because you rolled a 20 and a 20. And I said, okay, well, how about I roll the D20 again, and then whatever that happens is a critical. Okay, so I rolled it 23 times in a row. So it was dead. Bang! Kill the Hydra with 1 mace shot. I was like, this guy's invincible. I'm never playing this character again. He's just gonna retire. It's like... But yeah, so how's that for fairness?
Yeah, I mean, how old was your DM at the point?
We were probably, 16, 17, something like that.
Yeah, it sounds like a mistake you'd make at 16. I mean, there's the opposite mistake that you make a little later on, where you make things too easy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, adjudicating balance. Excuse me. Adjudicating balance in an actual live game it's a lot more art than science.
Yeah, it is.
But it is the biggest selling point of pen and paper role playing games, that you can actually change the scenario
Yeah.
live, as it were.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that takes a lot of time to develop because it's just a matter of just running a lot of games before you learn how to do it properly.
I think also I found that an element of that is the human interaction between the players and the DM. If like once you get to know each other and how the other guy thinks, it makes that process go a lot smoother. We've had games where like we just had like random people that we didn't know join the game or like try to DM a game or whatever, and it was generally like a really bad experience for everybody involved. It wasn't much fun. Okay, somebody.
Speaking of deadly systems here, Ever Changing Bear is playing Warhammer Fantasy,
Okay, I've only played the
and that
very original Warhammer, and that thing was like you had one hit point. You get hit, you
yep,
die.
that thing is deadly. I've never played it. I've only glossed over the rules now and then.
Yeah,
It actually reminds me. So because of the degeneration of Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah.
that's now in the hands of Hasbro. So the company that makes Barbie owns Dungeons and Dragons.
Wow.
Yeah, they bought what is it? Now it's Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
Anyway, so this is something. It's one of the good things that came out of the internet. It's called the OSR, or the Old School Revival, or whatever you want to call it, Old School Renaissance,
okay.
which is people basically reviving the old Dungeons and Dragons
Oh,
and playing it, as you are supposed to play it. So one of the concepts they have there, I don't recall from which game specifically it is, but it's what's called a funnel. Every player rolls like 8 characters,
yeah,
and then they go through as little zeros to the like through an adventure,
yeah.
and whoever survives is their character, and he
Oh,
gets
right.
an actual character class.
Okay. So,
Becomes a warrior, magic user, what have you.
so they start out like little peasants, zero
Yeah, they
level.
start out like the town candle maker or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
cook
yeah. That's
or
pretty cool.
scullery maid or what have you.
Yeah.
Self-immolation. Oh, what are you playing, a priest or a cleric of Sigmar? Well, anyway,
I don't know. So is Warhammer Fantasy Fourth Edition? Is that the Warhammer that's like in space with the orcs and the bolters and all that? Or
that's 40k.
all right.
40k is one of the most awesome things that ever mistakenly been invented by someone who did not intend to invent it.
But then, is it like a computer game or is it pen and paper as well?
Warhammer Fantasy?
No, Warhammer 40k.
It had the license has been revoked and the company is okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. So a few years back, a company called FFG.
Yeah.
I forget what it actually stands for, but their initials is FFG. And they made a bunch of role-playing games set in the Warhammer 40k universe based on the D10, basically the percentile system.
Okay.
The art in those books is gorgeous, and it's true to the setting. Like the whole everything in it is true to the setting and to the tone of the game.
Yeah.
But Games Workshop is in the process of being converged, and it's of course trying to appeal to the wider audience. So they're diluting and basically
So
destroying
people too, that
40k,
kind of nonsense.
which is one of the things I find really funny about 40k is that a bunch of liberal Brits came up with the idea that basically the space elves, the Eldar,
Yeah.
they basically destroyed the universe by, is there any polite way to say this? Murder sodomizing the god of physical excess into being. There were the space elves, the Eldar, were so corrupt and indolent that they started pursuing stronger and stronger sensations, to the degree that most of their culture degenerated into utter just sensual excess.
Yeah.
And that accumulation of sensation created what's called Slanesh, the god of sensual excess.
Okay.
Now, if you think about it, this is one of those cases where someone who was an utter liberal
Yeah.
just, by mistake, said something very true.
Yeah.
Which I find very, very funny, but I don't think anyone else really catches on to the humor in that.
I didn't know that. I've read one of the Warhammer 40k fiction books, and I found it very tiring,
Yeah,
plotty,
the
nihilistic.
novels aren't very good.
Yeah.
There's two series which are okay by Dan Abnett. They follow two inquisitors.
Okay.
I forget what they're actually called, but you can just search Dan Abnett and
Actually,
you can
I've read
find
so
those
many
books.
books, but this one was so crap that I don't even remember anything about it. I don't remember the plot. It was just very nihilistic. I thought, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the big problem is that if you don't get the 40k setting, you can very easily you can very easily like degenerate into nihilism.
Yeah.
Where the point of 40k is basically to not go quietly into the dark.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of 40k.
Yeah, but it's sort of set in a way that it's pretty much it's the last gasp sort of thing, isn't it?
It's the last gasp, either before the end or before redemption. That's always the tension that you had in the original 40k.
Yeah.
Whereas that tension is completely gone with the idiocy that's gotten into that Games Workshop is now infusing into the game. But I think we veered off topic as usual.
Yes, indeed. Well, so tell us some of your role-playing stories. That's,
One of my personal favorites is I don't recall the exact scenario. Again, this was like more than 10 years ago, so my memory is not what it used to be. But I recall that my party was crawling through an orc fortress.
Yeah.
And they basically stumble across. It's an old like a Legionnaires fortress.
Yeah.
In my own homebrew universe. So just as the setting is basically they're like on the eastern front, on the eastern borders. What was the Roman Empire like collapsed like 300 years ago, and this is one of the fortresses that the Legion used to keep, against the eastern hordes of the orcs.
Right. Okay.
And now the orcs have taken it, and civilization is reflourishing, and they're trying to retake the eastern marshes.
Right.
So they're crawling through this half-used, half-abandoned fortress, and they stumble upon the mess hall that's just full of orcs, eating, drinking, hitting each other, etc. Of course, they're kicking around their goblin servants.
Yeah. as they should.
And at this point, the wizard pipes up and asks for the exact dimensions of the room. And whenever a wizard asks you the exact size of the room, you know that shenanigans are afoot.
Yeah.
So he just looks down, opens the player's handbook, goes to the magic section, looks up something, and says, "I cast web."
Yep.
He was just at the right level to cover the entire mess hall with his web spell, and then they just tossed in a few torches and set basically like 2/3 of the garrison on fire.
Yeah. Web is a very powerful spell if you've got a good imagination, which my brother did. My brother was very good with magic users. Like, I'd be sort of like, yeah, got magic missile, just boom. It's like a gun with one bullet,
Yep.
He was a lot more...
magic missile is a trap spell for first level magic users.
Yeah.
The real good spells in first level are color spray and sleep.
Yeah, sleep is a very powerful one, yeah. And color spray also, but although that's an illusionist spell as far as I know. Well, again, you're talking about advanced, I'm talking about basic, so. It was...
right, and basic illusionist was its own class. It wasn't a magic user like subclass.
It didn't exist, illusionist, as a class. In basic.
I don't recall. I know that illusionist was its own class. I just don't recall in which variation of the game.
In first edition advanced D&D, they eventually came out with it in one of the expansion packs. They had,
Gotcha.
like they had also the monster manuals. They had two or three different monster manuals. They had the monster manual, then monster manual second edition. Then they had deities and demigods, which was like all the different kind of gods that you could have as a cleric, and the different what they allowed their clerics to have in terms of spells and stuff. And then there was was the one that had a Githyanki on the cover? I always forget the name. They
It's probably Manual of the Planes.
it was like a monster manual, but it had like pretty powerful monsters in it.
Maybe the Demon Folio?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, anyway, like the D&D stuff started to like expand out, and in a way that's also why I went back to the basic, because the rules like encyclopedia, it's one book, you've got all the monsters, you've got all the rules, and they're flexible enough. Like in the rules encyclopedia, you can make a paladin, you can make a dark knight as well, which is quite a cool class. You can make rangers, you can make you can adapt things so that you can create the sort of assassin class is basically a thief that like specializes in a few things. So I quite like that aspect of it, because you never really know what you're meeting. And then you had like additional special classes that came out in like Dragon magazine or something. Like I remember one of them was the Hauri, which is basically a slut. It's essentially a prostitute that has got some kind of magic and charm spells and stuff.
Oh, so a bard.
Yeah, it's like the female version of, basically that's what it was.
I honestly detest the class, and not because of the class,
Oh, I hate
because
bard.
of the people that play bard.
Yes. Oh, I so agree. They're like those hippie fucking fedora wearing vegans.
I've met in all my time DMing, I've met one good bard player.
I've
One.
not met a single one. They should all be shot on
And
sight.
he played the bard more as a lore keeper, storyteller, and like adventuring, like swashbuckler.
Yeah,
Basically, so he played it more like a gentleman warrior
yeah,
who just had a very vast liberal education, sort of.
yeah.
That was more the take he was taking on the bard, which made it a lot more tolerable.
Yeah, no, bards
So
are just clowns. They should just be hacked straight away. No,
anyway,
I don't think I don't think I'd have a player be a bard. I'd just be like, no, not allowed.
it's actually as another aside here, a channel on YouTube I can heartily recommend. It's called what's the guy? Something Urbanski. He's a guy who actually he wrote his own like authentic medieval setting for D&D.
Okay.
Called I think it's called Lion and Dragon.
Oh.
And his he has some really interesting points, and he just does like these 10-20 minute videos talking about D&D and the general like he's a heathen but
Yeah.
on our side. So
Well, the thing about D&D was pretty cool. There was also, I think they called Space Jammer, where they like had like ships going to space.
Spelljam, that was a weird one.
It was kind of weird.
Honestly, I like that sort of weirdness.
Yeah, and also they introduced firearms at one point, which was, we tried to play once a game where we mixed a bit of like I can't remember. It was a graphic novel that had like monks and huge robots. It was kind of like, the planet had like got a lot of big technology, and then the usual apocalypse happened, but then there was also magic and some you didn't really know if it was magic or some really advanced tech that looked like magic and that people forgot how it works. But then we tried to play a game like that where you had sort of these huge golems that were like robotic type things, but you also had lasers, and it was actually really quite interesting. Although when we went that route, then we thought, well, what do we do? Why don't we just play Gamma World, which essentially is kind of the same thing.
And speaking of mixing your chocolate and peanut butter, have you ever played or read Shadowrun?
I have played it once, and I've read it. It was gimmicky, I think is the word that comes to mind. And we didn't really like the idea of elves and orcs in a cybernetic cyberpunk future. We're just like, nah, doesn't work. What we did like, and I did like a lot, and I tried to play, but by that time I was like on my own. I had left home and I saw my brother infrequently and whatever. Was I think it's called Cyberpunk.
They
That was
actually both came out more or less in the same year.
Yeah, that was a really cool game, and they had some really cool stuff because I think one of the people that helped design that game was Walter John Williams. Walter John,
Interesting.
Walter John Williams is a writer, for those who don't know, who wrote some pretty brilliant books. One of which um, is called Voice of the Whirlwind, which I really liked because it had the main character was a clone that had a lot of martial arts training. And the guy, Walter John Williams, did karate as well. So at the time that I read it, I was like my mid-20s and I was like fanatically into karate. And the guy who wrote that book actually knows something about martial arts properly. And so the book was, I don't know, it was really cool. And also the mentality of the main character was very, I could relate to it a lot. Because basically they were in a war on an alien planet and whatever, and their leader was just ineffective and shit and was getting men killed. And this guy was kind of like his lieutenant or a sergeant or whatever. And in the end, he just like pulled out his handgun, shot the guy in the head, and said, "Right, we're going to do things different now. We're going to do it this way." And he saved a bunch of people. But then, of course, he got court-martialed. I don't remember the whole story. But anyway, but Walter John Williams had an input into the cyberpunk role-playing game, so it worked. It had like really cool stuff, like speeded up reflexes and bionic eyes and whatever. You could go as you want. And obviously they borrowed from William Gibson as well, Neuromancer, and all the William Gibson stories that usually involved sexy women with like fingernails that like razor cut your throat and stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool game, but I didn't get to play it a lot. And the art was good as well. There was very sexy art in it. It was very cool.
Yep. Both books, like what's it called? Shadowrun and Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
They're like their first two iterations had really good black and white line art.
Yeah.
That was really, I personally think that third edition Shadowrun has some of the best like in-book line art.
I don't know if I saw that one. I think I saw an in-between one that had pretty crappy art actually.
Mm-hmm. Now, third edition one has some excellent art. But anyway, just on the thing of Cyberpunk, since nowadays I'm mostly a video gamer, so there's actually CDPR, like a Polish video game company, actually got the license to make a Cyberpunk video game.
Oh.
And they've been working on it for the last 8 years. It's supposed to be coming out December 10th.
Yeah.
It's basically the company's magnum opus.
Okay.
And they're actually working with one of the original creators, specifically Mike Pondsmith.
Okay.
And one of the interesting things is I've listened to a lot of interviews with him, and this is actually something a little more broader about science fiction writers, because some of them seems to be, prescient about how things are going to, happen.
Yeah.
So one of the things in the cyberpunk universe is what's called part of what starts with the collapse of the United States is what's called the Gang of Four, where the alphabet soup agencies of the U.S. government basically start controlling the government from behind, from behind the scenes, and starting wars and hacking the world exchange system to try and maintain economic appearances. And you're just reading something, and it's like, this man wrote this in the 80s.
Yep. Well,
and you're like,
what about the guy who wrote Traveller, whose name escapes me for a sec, Mark Millar? That guy. Basically, the whole concept of Traveller, which you find out in little bits and pieces when you first start out, but over the years it came out, and he wrote this stuff in the 70s, late 70s, is that the ancients, this race of super advanced aliens, basically terraformed and colonized and created all sorts of other alien races, seeding them from the original planet being Earth. Now, if you've read my Face on Mars book, you'll know that, well, I've come up with based on the evidence that we have, I think this solar system was genetically manipulated and engineered by somebody which, people give them different names, whether you call them Anunnaki, whether you call them, the Nephilim or whatever. And, again, there's people that say, oh, these guys are all spiritual beings, the Watchers. There's other guys that say, no, these were physical beings. And some guys are saying, yes, they were physical beings, but they were the spiritual,
Well,
gods of
I
the
mean,
Bible.
they started spiritual and then they made a big mistake. And then they became the earthbound.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is that the king lists of the Egyptian king lists, they have these kings that lasted, and the Babylonian, even more ancient king lists, they had these kings that lived 40,000 years, 20,000 years. It's like, what the fuck? And it's really interesting anyway. And it's, it looks like we might have some structures on the moon and stuff like that. So it was like, how did this guy come up with all of this back then, So I think Mark Miller was a bit precise. To be honest, in the 80s, 90s, but by the early 90s, I knew this stuff was fact. I mean, like things like Carnivore, Echelon, all that stuff was already out there then.
Carnivore?
Yeah, these are like computer NSA programs that basically agglomerate
everything.
Oh,
yes. And as far as like ancient civilizations go, there's actually been a whole bunch of very recent discoveries just of cities that just don't fit into the accepted timeline.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch. Some of them are underwater, and you're looking at cities that look, technologically speaking, classical, but as far as our sedimentary dating seems to be showing them to be like 40,000 years old.
Yep.
But they're under the sea, and China is busy hiding one of them under a big artificial mountain.
Oh, that's
there's one off the coast of India.
Yeah.
I think there's also like 2 or 3 like right here in the Mediterranean Sea, but they're being eroded quite quickly because of the high salinity of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, there's again, graphic novels, right? If you read Slain, the Horned God, the graphic novel, the whole of the Mediterranean Sea becomes a sea because it became the inland sea. Like the Pillars of Hercules broke essentially, and it just flooded a whole bunch of cities that were there. And there's actually some geological evidence to suggest that probably is what happened. So it's very interesting. I mean, in Peru, you've got like things that are 30,000 feet in the air, and they're ports. Like, wait, why have we got a fucking port at 13,000 feet? With this? So the whole geology like happens very slowly thing. Yeah, no, I don't think it does, and I think we're about to find out actually, because the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, has been shifting like a fucker. And I wrote that 26 years ago in the Face on Mars book. I said, if my thing is correct, this is going to keep speeding up. And in about 20, 30, 40 years, it might flip. And now we know the Earth has flipped poles plenty of times before. What we don't know, what most people don't know, is when that happens, if it happens like this, which everything seems to indicate it does, it sort of drifts, ping, and then you get this like tipping point. Now when that happens, you get massive tidal waves, you get complete change of weather. I mean, Antarctica used to have tropical forests on it. We know that because we've drilled cores down to the bedrock. Yeah, so there's rumors that there's entire cities under the ice in Antarctica. There are found mammoths that have been completely frozen solid, and then when the tundra has thawed out, that they've got like little flowers in their mouth that they were eating. So they've got
they still have like half digested food in their stomachs.
Yeah, and that means
it is actually how they like researched like ancient flora.
Yeah, and that means they were frozen pretty much instantly, because otherwise it would rot. If the mammoth died and then it sat there for like a week before it got frozen, which is what would really happen, even a day. A little flower, a buttercup flower, does not stay unwilted for more than an hour, 2 hours, if it's been ripped off its root and inside the mouth of a mammoth frozen solid to the point that you can see still the color of the petals and all the shape. No, that means it pretty much got frozen like, bzz, you're frozen, you know. And there was a film, the catastrophe film, or is it The Day After Tomorrow? I can't remember the name of it, with Dennis Quaid, where they discuss that, where there's like super cyclones happen that drop the temperature by like, I don't know, 80 degrees in like a second or something.
Actually, something I've been wondering about is honestly made me wonder if the like meteorological services are lying. Because I'm seeing, and this is something I don't know if they're lying or if my memory is at fault here. When I'm willing to give even odds for both.
Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid and as a teenager, summer. I remember here in Israel, at least, you basically had 9 months of summer, and then you had about 3 months of sort of winter.
Yeah.
And now winter we actually have winter. It's actually cold and it's actually raining. Yeah. And everything I'm seeing on the meteorological service site, like the official Israeli government meteorological site, is telling me stuff like we're having less than average rain and temperatures are above normal and when this summer, as an example, we only had one heat wave at the end, which lasted about a week, and one at the beginning, which also lasted about a week. And throughout the entire summer, temperatures were around 30 degrees Celsius, which is very mild for Israel.
Yeah, it is bullshit, because I distinctly remember 4 seasons when I was in Italy, and it was summer was hot, autumn was cold, winter was snow. I remember my grandparents' place where I lived for a few years with my brother and my cousins. We would have snow every winter. We made giant snowballs that we rolled down the hill, and we left them there. One of the giant snowballs we made, we rolled it up right to where the school bus used to pick us up, and it stayed there until like June. That was how big it was before it melted down. Now, same place, same location on Earth, you hardly get snow there. You get a little bit of snow maybe for like a week or two. I remember running out into the snow, like woke up one morning, I was like, hey, there's snow, and I ran out, and my grandma like getting a heart attack, because I used to get flus at the drop of a hat. And like, the guy's in his pajamas with no socks, and he's rolling around in the snow like a madman. What the hell? So, but yeah, it's just, I had that sensation, weirdly enough, that feeling when you're a kid that it's like, oh, it's all white and it's cool. I had that sensation. You forget. As you get old, you get jaded and you get fucking covered in scars. You don't remember all the cool stuff. And in London, I was living on the 5th floor of a beautiful apartment, which actually my now wife had found for me at the time. It was like right on the Thames, that a view of the whole, pretty much, of London. And I remember, I used to close the curtains in the bedroom because of the light. But I woke up, I was about to, I can't remember if I was going to work or if it was a day off. I think it might have been a day off. And I walked into the lounge, and it had these big glass doors and glass windows, and I looked out, and the whole of London was covered in snow. And it was like, the same exact sensation. And I remembered, oh yeah, that's what it feels like, It's really cool. And
there's something about the smell of the air when it's snowing.
Yeah, it's clean.
So if it's clean, cold, dry, there's most people, and you included, as far as I can tell, don't like the cold.
I hate it.
But I honestly do enjoy cold weather up to a point.
Yeah.
Like around 4 degrees Celsius is where my own cold resistance starts to break down.
Yeah, no, for me it's cold when it's like 20 degrees. That's kind of chilly.
20 degrees for me is warm. It's it just gets these really weird, like I'm like at work, I'm in a t-shirt, it's night, it's like 10 degrees Celsius, which for me it's comfortable. And I sometimes get these people who They look at me and start shivering. I sort of some weird sympathy, shivering because they see me in a t-shirt
Yeah.
and it's a little chilly, and they start shivering just because they're looking at me, which is always perplexes me.
Yeah. I think we've veered off the topic again. Oh, another.
Indeed, actually,
Yeah. No, okay.
I want
Another
to go
really.
to the whole. Oh,
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll just finish this quickly. It's called The Maelstrom, and it's a little book. It's one book, and it was written by a 15-year-old kid. It's actually a really cool role-playing game. I'm just gonna quickly check if I've got the little book here. I don't remember if I even have it with me or not, but I might not. No, I don't think I do. Yeah, well, it's got like two guys like fencing on the cover, and it's like one's wounded by like an epee. But the thing is, it's set in the medieval times, and there is magic in it, but the magic is like really hard to use. You have to be a really old guy, and if you get all the rolls correct, you sometimes can get this maelstrom, which can teleport you anywhere in time and space. So it's got that little gate to it, but the wound, the way it works, is very realistic. I mean, this 15-year-old kid, I don't know, he must be some kind of freaky genius, because he had all all these herbs. There's a whole list of herbs in the back of the book of like what they can do, poisons and cures and all sorts of stuff. And the wounds are like, if you get wounded, it takes you like weeks. Like the hit points are like, you get to heal half a hit point a day. Like it's one hit point a week.
If you're having bed rest.
Yeah, it's like one hit point a week.
It's also like that in. D&D originally was also like that.
Yeah.
The only way to get quick healing was with clerics.
Yeah. But no, this is a realistic wound. Like a big wound will like incapacitate you sort of for like weeks, and if you get hit enough times, I think you even get like crippled or something. So it was great, and you had priests that have the power to sort of like affect people, because again, in the Middle Ages or whatever, a priest was considered a pretty powerful thing, and they can keep like the undead and stuff like that, ghosts and stuff at bay. So they had some supernatural monsters, but it was very cleverly done because it's subtle. It's like the supernatural element is sort of like in the background, so a new player wouldn't necessarily know whether it's real or not. It was very, and it was also
there's actually another system that also did it. That's also highly deadly and also has a more subtle supernatural element, which you might actually like just to read. It's called Legend of the Five Rings. You're basically playing samurais in a sort of low fantasy Japan.
I've read. Was that a D&D subset or not?
No, it's a completely different system. I think it's like a D6 system. You only roll D6s.
Okay.
I've never played it. I've only read it, and I really like the lore of the place.
Yeah.
The lore is basically like a higher fantasy version of Japan's own like mythology.
Yeah.
There's the whole Amaterasu and her whole
like
her thoughty ways.
Yeah, they've got the Oni and all those things.
Mm-hmm. But it was actually, to sort of complete the circle. There's like you basically have two types of role-playing games, which is what I call the assumption of competence or the assumption of incompetence.
Yeah.
So it's like, does the game assume that the characters are competent or incompetent?
Yeah.
That's one of the big differences. As an example, Shadowrun assumes that that the characters are highly competent, while D&D assumes that the character is one step above, a pig farmer with a stick.
Why would you say that? I think actually D&D, in fact, pretty much states player characters are the non plus ultra compared to the peasant farmers. Your average peasant farmer is like a 0 level character with like 4 hit points. Your first level fighter's got like 6, 8, something like that, and can use a whole bunch of weapons.
In the original ones, a fighter is like you can be proficient in one weapon, and you have minuses to all the other weapons, and in a few levels you can get a specialization.
There's weapon. It's like 4 in original Dungeons and Dragons if you're a fighter. If you're a magic user, it's 1 weapon.
If you're like you could take like the sling, quarterstaff, dagger, or whatever. But the thing was, the way at least I see it is that D&D, at least if you start at first level, is trying to tell like a coming of age and a hero's journey.
Yes, I would say yes. That's true. Yeah.
While a lot of more of the modern systems are actually they're trying to tell the story of an already established character.
Yeah. Well, I found the Marvel superhero role-playing game that was pretty clever in how basically the superheroes were all superheroes, you know. Um, but we played with the mechanics as well. If you were a competent, you know, if you created a competent non-superhero normal human in that superhero universe, you could still do a bit of damage to like one of the weaker superheroes. You could almost kick his ass. So it was quite interesting. But with superhero games, the game that we actually really liked but didn't get to play much at all was Aberrant.
I've only ever read that one.
It's brilliant though, because it's, you know, like 7,000 people because of this weird comet gets superpowers, and then it's based. That's what The Boys is. That's what The Boys in you know, Prime, Amazon Prime or Netflix or whatever it is. There's a show called The Boys, and that's what it would be.
Okay.
If like some people got superpowers, they'd just be complete assholes that do whatever the fuck they want. You know.
Well, I mean, it is a White Wolf game, so
Yeah.
being an asshole is par for the course.
It was that was really interesting though, and funny. It was also quite hilarious. Just the situations that came up.
The book itself was a fascinating, if difficult, read because it like goes between, you know, actually explaining the setting and rule
Yeah,
to suddenly there's like an in-setting, like, you know, snapshot of a magazine or
yeah. I
or
like
like
that.
hmm?
I like that part of it actually. I liked how that was. Also, if you find out there's like, you know, the good superheroes that are here to keep order, and then there's the bad guys who are just evil, rebel supervillains. But then if you read deep enough, it's like, oh, wait a minute. You know, the good guys that are keeping order, actually, that's the narrative. And the
Yep.
so-called rebels are the guys who just want to be free and leave us alone. So it's like, it becomes quite interesting.
And that is something. It's like every once in a while I like to think these things out because if you actually had some sort of event from which completely normal people suddenly, you know, emerged, you know, with superpowers,
Yeah.
I mean, you know that the world governments would go berserk.
Absolutely, but that's exactly what happens in Aberrant. There's all sorts of undercurrents of secret spy shit going on, like normal humans trying to like, oh, we gotta find a way to control these guys and capture them, and you know, keep them in control, whether overtly or covertly. And it's better if we do it covertly. There's all sorts of politics going on in that game. It's good for that.
Because the only way to control someone who can, you know, let's say burn you to a cinder just by looking at you,
Yeah,
is by emotional manipulation.
indeed. Which is again The
No.
Boys.
Okay, hold that one moment. The coffee one's out.
Have you seen The Boys? Okay, I'll talk to the chat for a bit. Whoever's still here listening. This is like nerd supreme. Daggers only for magic users. Yes, but then they expanded that to include staffs, daggers, and what was there was what third one, like net or something in basic D&D. Can you repeat the name of the samurai game? A Book of Five. Well, a Book of Five Rings is Gorin no Sho, but it might have something about five rings. When Woolly Ram comes back, we'll ask him. They found things like this in the Siberian tundra. Okay, I don't know. There's 20 of you logged in, but I'm guessing maybe you're all doing other stuff. What's another game that I really... Oh, Car Wars. I really enjoyed that. And... yeah, Car Wars. What else? Oh, Traveller, of course. Yes. Well, we must talk a bit about Car Wars and Traveller. Any questions, any comments, favorite role-playing games? Now's the time. Oh, we've been going an hour already. No, I think we're probably talking to ourselves. 21. No, there's one new guy that just joined. Unless the chat has died for some reason, you should be able to. Traveler, yeah. Glenn, how are you doing, Glenn? I didn't know that Glenn was here. Oh, Glenn's an old friend from long ago when he was a little boy. But yeah, Traveler is brilliant. And of course, the original Traveler. So we've just got an old friend of mine, Glenn, has joined the chat. And I used to, well, I went to school with his brother. He was the younger brother. But yeah, I think he's quite a lot into games and all that sort of thing. Now, we're just saying that Legend of the Five Rings, that's it. There you go. Yeah, no, the other game I really quite enjoyed playing quite a lot was Car Wars and Traveler. Those two.
Isn't Car Wars like set in a really weird, like almost Mad Max post-apocalypse sort of world?
Pretty much. It's sort of Mad Max, but with electric cars. But then they brought out the expansion modules again or whatever. So there's various time scales of Car Wars. So basically, Car Wars was set in, I think, 2044 or 2045 or something like that. So America collapses, as it always does, and then like civilization rebuilds up. But there's basically, so it collapsed into Mad Max status, everybody for himself, just cars and guns and like a couple of shotguns. And then it rebuilt up to like, no, we've got to have renewable energy. So now we put these green engines or electric power plants in cars that have conveniently got a specific weight, size, and dimension, and cell numbers, so that when you shoot them, you can just tick them off. And then the new sport became arena fights in vehicles. So you start to have these vehicles inside arenas that have machine guns, flamethrowers, and then of course it gets expanded into like, oh well, the original game was like basically you had these little counters on there were like cars and bikes on these little bits of road that were mapped out so you could like bump into each other, and it was just two sections of road. So it was like on a highway duel, essentially. That's what it was called. I think it was called Car Wars. The original was Highway Duels. And you had these little car guys, and then your player characters were basically an afterthought. Your player character was like a thing that had 3 hit points and could like run at like a couple of squares per, because it's per second, right? In 1 second, you've got like 10 tenths of a second in which to do stuff. That's how quick the game plays. So when the two cars come at each other and they start shooting at each other, you basically get to shoot once a second. But in that second, the maneuvering of the car, where it goes, it's all very precise because you can ram each other, you've got ram plates and stuff. When your car's totally buggered and you've got nothing left and you're down to hand weapons, like your character's got 3 hit points, and then if he's wearing body armor, he's got 6 hit points. and his handgun does like 2 points of damage. That's it.
That's completely, look, another tangent. Something I was thinking of. As in sci-fi, they always present like these, highly futuristic weapons. But I've been wondering for quite a long time: is there actually any need to make something better than like a chemical propellant?
There is, if you're gonna go in space. I mean, like lasers and stuff like that works better, I suppose. Like than.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, to make lasers that are actually man portable, you need a lot. It's not just a lot of energy. You also need, like advancements in capacitors and, localized cooling. And there's a whole.
Yeah, but actually, the power thing we've got is just people don't know about it. If you read my Overlords of Mars series of books, I actually talk about that technology, and at the back of the book, I actually tell you what's actually possible now, because. Again, people don't know this, but anti-gravity technology is a thing. It's real. It's been real for a long time. It's just being suppressed. partly for very good reasons. But once you've got the technology and you can miniaturize it, and I know they can, and I know they have, because they had a chip. This is like early 90s. It was a chip a bit smaller than my phone. Okay, it was about maybe 2/3 of the size of this, and that one chip was running on was at light speed. It didn't have electronic circuits. It had optical circuits. So everything worked at light speed. That one chip had the power, the processing power of 10,000 Krays. Now, to give you an idea of what a Kray is, in Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, and he was a pretty clever guy who did like science the old-fashioned way, a lot of science, a little bit of fiction. In Jurassic Park, he figured that they would have to use 3 Cray supercomputers to figure out the DNA of a dinosaur. That light chip was created shortly afterwards in the 90s, and that light chip I know works, and I know because I met and was friends, have been friends at a distance for a long time with a guy called Mark Carlotto. Mark Carlotto is one of the most eminent imaging scientists on the planet, and he's the guy that did all the work on the imaging of the face on Mars, who did a lot of papers on it, and he invented optical storage. So it was like a little crystal chip. I mean, this is a lot bigger, so it would be like a cubic centimeters, which is about the size of the top of that, of crystal, and that thing would be able to store petabytes of information. And when I asked him, but how the hell did you do that? And I was like, well, because a crystal has got planes, and the planes don't interfere with each other. So you can store the information in one plane, and you can store a shitload of information in digital format, because it really doesn't interfere with each other. And then you just change the angle by like a 1/10 of a degree, and you've got a whole new plane. So
it's basically, it's etched onto the plane of the crystal.
As far as I understand it, there's some level of it's rewritable as well, because it's like holograms. I don't know. It was beyond my level to understand. He had like a 45-second conversation with me about it we were both doing presentations at a thing in London where we were asked to speak. We went to dinner afterwards, and I didn't ask him more about this stuff, but he said, yeah, but because I asked him about the light chip, and I was like, they've got this stuff, and I think they've got this. So, and he goes like, yeah, I know they have that, because I'm the guy that invented. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I did it for HP, and then I finished, and I was really proud of it, and I thought, oh, that's cool. And then HP the government came and took it, and that was it. Never heard of anything for the last 20 years. So
I honestly wonder how they make it non-volatile.
Hello, Scotch girl. I don't know, but apparently it's more resilient than like whatever floppy disks and hard drives. There is, I am not sure, but there is a way to store information in maybe it's this particular type of crystal. I don't know, it was quartz or whatever, but there's some funny properties of crystals that allows you to store information in them. And again, if you keep
the only way I can think of it being non-volatile, and you don't need power for the memory to remain.
Yeah.
Is if you somehow etch or change the structure or the lattice.
I think it changes the structure of the lattice on a certain level, because basically you're bombarding it with like light, and I don't know, it's flipping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't want to talk nonsense, but my understanding of it was reusable. You didn't have to,
We're basically at the end of my knowledge on this subject as well. So
I think there's a piezoelectric effect which basically stores the charge. And I don't know how it doesn't interfere with each other, but I don't know. It's crystal radios are interesting. Xenostar, I remember you saying that you used to know how to build one. I used to have a little book, and I don't know what the hell happened to it, that taught you how to build a crystal radio. If you can find something like that, let me know, because it's something I want to try my hand at. Although I know that because of all the radio waves now, crystal radios basically are not really going to work, because there's too much interference. But right, in the old days when radio didn't exist yet, it was very new, you could build your own crystal radio set and it would pick up stuff.
Original question. So, except when you're up in outer space, let's say you actually invade a planet.
Oh, you've got a
Do you
crappy
actually
audio.
force?
You're kind of breaking up. Say again.
Is that any better now?
You're very roboty.
There's probably some problem with the connection. Just a moment. Let me try something, and I hope I don't.
Yeah. In the meantime.
Okay. Is it any better now?
That's a lot better. Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay. I just got off the apartment's network.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's what other role playing?
So what I was wondering about is just for man portable weapons. Let's say you have your space marines. You want to invade and conquer a planet. For the glory of God Emperor Trump.
Yeah, but
do you actually want
the
like
thing, generally the reason that you need better weapons is because the armor gets better. That's historically that's what happens.
Yeah, but to what degree can you actually armor the human body? Because at some point, the shockwave alone will decompress internal organs.
No, that takes a cannon, dude. I mean, you can get some pretty hectic armor right now. You can get laminate armor, and again, if you're talking, they already have this, but now they're trying to develop it so where the guy moves around and he doesn't snap his own spine when he does something wrong and shit like that. But if you've got a enhanced exoskeleton suit so that it's powered, so you've got powered armor, which means you can fucking carry a shit ton of weight. They can put laminate composite armor on you. Honestly, you could take a minigun to the chest and just, it's
interesting. I'm just wondering where the force transfers to if it doesn't go into the person wearing it.
Well, the thing is, people think that getting shot with a rifle or whatever has got a huge bunch. It doesn't. I mean, the amount of force is the same force that you feel when you pull the trigger, on your shoulder. It's just like a bit of a push. And, if you've got full-on armor that is shaped armor, mostly it'll, glance off. So you'll feel like a ping, but it'll be like a ping that wouldn't, so the difficult part, of course, with armor would be the joints. That's a difficult thing to armor properly. But again, you can have some pretty interesting, sort of armor that slides over each other sort of thing.
I mean, you can see it in medieval armor.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I think, if you're talking, and also where is the will for it, right? I mean, if we're gonna go and take over an alien planet, you bet your ass they would have exoskeletons out within a year. They would fucking throw so much money and research at it that build them. So if you've got powered, laminate armored exoskeletons, then yeah, I think your average 357 would be like a spitball. Especially if this guy got and they've got they don't have quite glass steel yet, but it's getting there. I mean, there's enough materials that you can fire a 44 Magnum point blank at a visor that won't penetrate. So, and I mean, if a guy's
something else I was thinking of when it comes to spaceship design, is there any reason not to make spaceships perfectly spherical?
It's boring.
Because when you see, I know it's boring, but when you see spaceships, you see they look like ships or like submarines.
Well, also if you're gonna. Well, they do, because you've got to have if your spaceship is going to land on planets, then it's pretty good if it's aerodynamic. Now, a sphere is aerodynamic, but it's not probably the most aerodynamic shape you can build something.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, sir. Xenostar just gave me the name of Radios That Work for Free by K.E. Edwards. That might actually have been it. From 1970. Sounds familiar, actually. That might have been the book. Thanks, buddy. We've got Scotch Girl, unless she's run away again. I mean, there's actually a girl here on a role-playing chat. That's just weird. So, yes, other role... Oh, Star Wars! How could I forget?
Did you play the old Galaxies? I think that's what the system was called, Star Wars Galaxies.
Yes, so there was two. There was Star Wars, the original, and then it came out with Star Wars Second Edition or something. Now, the first one was pretty classical. It had the, the Jedi, whatever. The thing about Star Wars that I didn't like so much was the character. It was like very difficult to kill anyone. The characters were pretty, I wouldn't say immune, but they were like,
Robust.
very. And your stormtroopers were like, their helmets gave them a -1 to hit, and it was sort of like, what the fuck? But there was an explanation for that, which was quite ingenious by our DM, that said, no, that all makes sense. Stormtrooper armor looks cool, but actually is cheap crap that's mass-produced just to make people robotic, scary, insect-like, and just like, oh, it's a stormtrooper, let's not fuck about, because those guys don't take any shit. And just to keep the population that, which, makes sense. It's a pretty good psychological sort of explanation. But then there are some weapons that are really cool, and one of them is the Force Pike that people ignore, but it's like, there's a little bit of lore in these things where they talk about, oh, the Force Pike is used by the hunters of the planet Yavin or whatever. And it's like a Force Pike is the only thing that does like a 40 damage plus something, so it's like, and the system that I really did like in Star Wars was that they had scalability when you're fighting spaceships, fighter ships, capital ships. So you've got like human, then there's like fighter ship, then there's like bigger ship, capital ship. And it's like, if you're a human shooting at a starfighter, it's like a class above. So it's like, even if you roll a 12 damage, then you maybe do 1 hit point of damage on the starfighter, which is kind of nothing, because the starfighter's only got like 6 points of shielding, let's say, of shield. So a starfighter's laser, which maybe does 2D, 1 or 2 hits will knock out your shield. But a human can pretty much fire his handgun at it all day and it won't do jack, because it just can't even harm it. So it had that.
I mean, it's like firing at a tank with a handgun.
Yeah, exactly. So it had that, which I quite liked. And I actually quite liked the spaceship combat rules, which were very... they were very cleverly done in that you had the shields. You could, as they say in the thing, you could put the shield all to the back. You could put the energy of the shield at the front, at the back if you're being chased, whatever. And it worked pretty well. I thought that the spaceship combat was intelligent.
Vehicle combat in RPG games is always a sticking point. When someone manages to do it right, that's
yes, I had
like a once in a lifetime achievement.
I had to create my own spaceship combat rules for Traveller, which originally I created this crappy little game called Starspark, which that's all it was. It was like spaceships throwing a bunch of missiles and lasers at each other, and you had limitations on the type of shape of your ship would determine how many missiles you could have, how many lasers you could have. Certain alien races could get cheap lasers, but then they get no missiles, that sort of thing. And it was basically an exercise in mathematics in trying to figure out what you were going to do and how many missiles were you going to shot in your first volley, because how many missiles does the other guy have? And does he use his missiles to target your missiles or to target your ship? So it was actually quite an interesting space chess type game. But the basis of that became my basis for doing how missiles work in Traveller, because the way Traveller does space combat is retarded. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic, and it's like 10-minute turns, and you shoot your laser, and then you have to wait for 10 minutes. It's just, no. That's not how spaceship in a cinematic sort of environment has to work. So, of course, I invented Z space, where you shoot your laser, which goes into Z space using tachyons, and anything it meets along the way in the physical world, it pops out and gives an explosive burst, which is why you can see the lasers, because they're interacting as they're traveling in this alternate hyperspace dimension. They're interacting with your occasional gas molecule or whatever, and it looks like the beam is firing out there, but really the beam has already hit the target by the time you see it, sort of thing. and there's like coefficients of speed and that. So your lasers have a range, which is as per the Traveller game rules, because after that distance, the Z space degrades and your laser disappears. And your missiles have got like 10g acceleration, and then it's how much fuel your missile has got, which is dependent on the type of weight of missile, how much fuel you put in, how much bombs, etc. But I've standardized the missiles because, you know, in Traveller, if you use nuclear weapons, you become like a criminal that's wanted by the entire Imperium. So,
Really? Even in space?
yeah. The Empire has got a thing like, nah, if you use a nuclear weapon, we're going to hunt you down and we're going to give bounties for people to track you down and bring you back in dead or alive.
Keep that thought. There's actually something I was like thinking about for a while. But on the whole thing of space battle, have you ever read the Honor Harrington books? They're not really good, but they have some really cool ideas about space battles.
I can't remember. I don't think I have, actually.
So the first few books are pretty good, but it degenerates after that. As the author was very successful, and he just kept on churning out books, because good money.
There's a guy who he wrote a brilliant. Let me just see if I might have it on Kindle. It was a brilliant little series that went on for like a bunch of books, and I actually wrote to him at one point because he had some really clever concepts, which I really enjoyed. Let me just see if I can find the name of it, because it was a really good series, well written as well, and quite, it was. Oh man, how do I go to my library? There we go, library. There. Let me just see if I have it on here. It was a while ago. It was a few years back. I'm going through some. No, cancel. I don't want to delete anything. There's quite a few.
Do you remember what sort of genre it was?
Yeah, it was basically space battle, military science fiction, and it was.
I wonder if we're thinking about the same series. Is it The Lost Fleet?
Oh, that rings a bell.
I read The Lost Fleet, not to its end, but I really enjoyed it. It was basically a science fiction retelling of what is that Greek?
It's called Spinward.
Greek general.
Here's one. It's by. This is one of the things. Oh, come on. Spinward Fringe. By Randolph Lalonde. But Spinward Fringe is the third series or something. And the ship is called Triton. So that's the guy's name is Randolph Lalonde. But he's very good. I really liked the whole little series that he did. He's written like, I don't know, a dozen books probably, and they're all in the same thing. And of course, a classic that if you haven't read this book, you really should. It's by Paul Anderson, and it's called The High Crusade. It's brilliant. It's basically a bunch of aliens land on Earth in like the 13th century, and I'll leave it there. It's really, it's both good and funny and realistic in a weird way. And the guy knows his history, so it made it really quite interesting. And then there's another series which I read called by Von, what's his name? Von Kepper or something. Star Viking, I think, was one of them. Randolph Lalonde is good.
Star Viking is showing up as Von Hefner.
Yeah.
It's also showing up as a sort of board game.
Oh, I don't know about that. Maybe there is a board. Maybe they made a board game out of it, but I don't know. I didn't read that. Yeah, this Spinward Fringe by Randolph Lalonde is written. He's good. I like that series. It was very, very cleverly done in the space battles. And another one that I actually really liked, the space battle, was written by a guy who I have since completely disavowed and will never read anything from him again.
What did he do?
And it disturbed me when I read it. But, this was in my naive early 20s when I was in South Africa doing karate 6 times a week or whatever. What the hell? It was called Star Wolf. That was the name of the book.
Okay.
I don't remember the author, but the author is one of those science fiction writers of America, super gay guy, who basically has a scene with like a kid running out of his room in one of his science fiction books. He's a full-on flamer. And in that book, he had like, I can't remember if it was the main guy or one guy that was like gay. And I was like, it was just like, oh, this is a really cool thing. And he's using light seconds in terms of distance and space. Yeah. And then it's like, wait, what? There's a gay guy. What's a gay guy doing in my science fiction book? What the hell kind of bullshit is this? Like, that's just wrong, but I kind of like just skipped over it, sort of thing. And instead, a guy the only author who's managed to do a gay-ish character that I thought was well made is, again, Walter John Williams in the brilliant book called Aristos. Aristos is a brilliant, brilliant book, and he's got a really cool concept in that book. Even the way the book is laid out is part of the concept, and it's very cleverly done. LS16.
What's the name of the author again of Aristos?
Oh, Walter John Williams.
Aristoi.
Yeah, Aristoi, sorry. Yeah. Very good book. Pretty much anything that Walter John Williams has written is pretty good, really. He's one of those guys like Dan Simmons. Dan Simmons was really brilliant, and then of late, his latest work has just been a bit crap. I've not enjoyed it. But he's done a couple of genres. Horror, which generally I stay very far away from, but he's done it very well. And there's a series on, I think, Netflix or maybe Prime, I can't remember, or Amazon, I can't remember, called The Terra, which is the name of his book, The Terra, and it's really well made. It actually follows the book quite closely. And it's based on the true story of these 2 ships that were trying to look for the Northern Passage and were sort of lost, both ships. And he tracks the historical, he makes his book fit the historical diaries that were found, all the bits that they knew that could do so. Very well made. Which is something, it's something that, who's the guy who wrote Pirates of the Caribbean? Tim, what's his name?
The movie?
Yeah, but the movie is based on a book, and the book is fucking brilliant. The movie is shit. Tim Powers. Tim Powers is another brilliant author. That guy, and again, anything that Tim Powers has written, you pretty much should read. The best book of Tim Powers is The Stress of Her Regard. And it's a book based on Venice, and it's I can't even describe it, but it hit me like a ton of bricks, partly because of some of the shit that was going through my life at the moment, partly because of Venice, partly because he knows the history of Venice to a point that is like, and partly because Venice is mystical and involved in a lot of weird shit from the beginning of time, and partly because a woman that I was kind of somewhat involved with in a weird way reminded me quite a bit of one of the characters in the book, which is this witchy, half demonic kind of weird. The Stress of Her Regard is a really good book, but he also wrote another book based on the British spy that defected to Russia. What's his name? Philip? Oh, hopefully it'll come to me. The spy is a real spy. And he wrote a book about the spy, but again, with his mystic... He writes fantasy books, so he includes magic and ghostly stuff, but in a very clever way. I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean has got Barbarossa in it, Blackbeard, with the cigar things, in his beard, and and again, based on historical, factual stuff. In Pirates of the Caribbean, they just made it like, yay, you know, Hollywood version. And
As always.
And they paid him a shitload of money, so he said, yeah, why not? I would have done the same, but it's got nothing to do with the book. The book's brilliant. But he wrote this other book about Phil. Oh, I nearly had it. Not Class, Phil something. Anyway, he was a very famous spy that defected to Russia. And he wrote this book. There's all the diaries and all the, because this guy was, you know, became very well known. People knew exactly where he was every day of his life, pretty much, because they investigated the crap out of it and then they published the stuff on him. And he wrote his book so that the spy guy, that is a real historical person, was exactly where he was throughout the actual book in real life. He put him in the same place doing. It's very clever. I mean, I don't know. I just like that sort of thing that's got like a lot of detailed truth in it, put it that way.
Less clever, but I think I found it at the time. I found it very engaging. So in the Harrington series of books, the way ships work, as it were, is they exude what's called a wedge of gravitational power. That's how they move.
Yeah,
they have like a literal wedge.
Yeah.
And no weapon can actually get through the wedge. At least
that's the same.
It requires
thing
a lot of power to get through it.
That's the same thing that's used in this Ranulph Lalonde guy. He does the same.
Gotcha.
And it's, I use the same in my books as well, because that is how anti-gravity would. If you can create gravity fields, that's what you do.
Gotcha. So the thing is then, so ships of the line instead become ships of the wall, because the way ships work then, they move in a wall,
yeah,
and then they turn to present their weapon ports,
yeah,
and then they spin back. So that was something I really liked from that universe.
Yeah.
There was something else I wanted. Just the thing when you're talking about atomic weapons being like a complete and utter, non-starter in the Traveler universe.
Yeah.
There's something I was thinking of is what happens if you just take the systematic assumptions of Dungeons and Dragons and just shove them into our world. So I was thinking of you just take medieval Europe, but it has Vancian magic, orcs, elves, and all that. I was thinking of how would things change, and one of the things I was thinking of, like, what type of magic would be considered more abhorrent, necromancy or enchantment? Because necromancy, violates the human body and is a mockery of the resurrection.
Yeah.
But enchantment magic abrogates a man's free will.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that those two classes, those two schools actually would be considered like dark magic, and completely and utterly forbidden.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I thought that, like necromancy would be like forgivable, but enchantment magic would be something that, if you were caught using it, you would be executed without recourse to a priest.
That makes sense. I could see that. Although, of course, we have always been subjected to enchantment magic throughout life, because, again, if you're male...
Yeah, but what I was thinking of is, like, if you do take it into this and you don't say that all magic is evil, then you have to say that, magic is a gift from God in some way. It's some way that humans can,
That is very interesting, because I was actually going to do a stream on this. I'm going to just introduce it, because otherwise we'll be here. We've been going an hour and a half. I'm actually quite exhausted. I've had a very difficult week.
Fair enough.
But, you see, I've been giving this quite a bit of thought, because I think I've mentioned before, I've read the story of Joan of Arc as written down by the boy who was essentially taking his great-grandfather's deathbed confession at age 90-something, who was a contemporary of Joan of Arc and had known her when they were in school as kids together. And it starts out mentioning how these kids used to play with fairies around one of the trees of the village. And then one of the kids got hurt, and the priest said, no, we're going to chase all the fairies away. And all the kids said, no, but we're our friends, we play with them, please don't chase them all away. So the priest said, okay, but if one kid ever gets hurt again in any way by anything, then I'll ban them. And everybody agreed to it, including the fairies. And then an accident happened, which was a genuine accident. A kid got hurt again, and the priest banned all the fairies. And it says, and then since that time, we've not been able to see the fairies anymore, but we used to, and like kids used to be able to do that. Now, this is a 90-something, 6-year-old man on his deathbed, limpid and clear of thought as you can get. I don't believe he was lying. And I've had personal experiences that also lead me to believe he was not lying. So, now, I know that the Catholic Church absolutely forbids that kind of thing, talking about dealing with magic and whatever, etc., etc. I have also read a book which I own, it's sitting over there, called Hands of Light by a lady called Barbara Ann Brennan, which discusses how to see auras and how to affect them. And you can see an aura on plants, you can see an aura on people, on animals, whatever. And it's a skill that you can literally teach anybody in about 10 minutes to do. So auras are there, they exist. There are, obviously, as a Catholic, you believe in spiritual entities. There are various spiritual entities of various natures. Who's to say that all fairies are evil? I don't know that they all are. Now, it may well be that they all are, I don't know. But also the Irish have a similar sort of thing. The Irish believe strongly in fairies to this day. And there have been even documentaries of people that say, no, there are fairies. I don't give a crap if you... Totally compos mentis guy. He's a farmer, he's got a business, and he says, yeah, you guys are going to make me out to be some crazy guy who believes in fairies. Oh, look at this stupid idiot. But why don't you come stay at my house for a few days and, then you can go out in that field over there and you have to do this and that and the other because otherwise you're going to have some problems. And, the guy did it and he was kind of like, yeah, I can't explain it, but there's some weird shit going on here. And that, to get a journalist or a documentary guy to say that, it's pretty difficult. So, I don't know. I think, in a funny way, I think the Hellboy movies have got a pretty decent take of that.
I saw those as a teenager. I don't remember much of them.
Well, in the Hellboy movies, the fairies / elves, that sort of realm, is like sort of invisible to us, and they're kind of like sick of us because we pollute everything, we destroy everything, we're doing unnatural things to the planet, we're just perverting everything. And like one of the big elf guys gets sick of us and said, no, we should wipe these fucking guys out, they're just a virus, So there is a definite difference in quality. If like myself, you've had the luck of being able to go into a virgin jungle in various parts of the planet where literally not just no white man's been there, but probably no human being before you has been there in the last few hundred years or maybe 1,000 years. There is a natural order of peace, I don't know how else to call it, of serenity that is absent in cities, is absent in even towns, is absent in any artificial building. Just not there. And you can call it what you want, but there's a thing there. And there are absolutely connections that you can make even with wild animals. It's a strange thing, but it exists, So when you're talking about, and this is just a natural physical world that you can see, touch, hear. So when people say that all the supernatural or the spiritual world or the invisible world to us is completely evil, I think that's a prudent approach, but I don't think that that's necessarily correct. It's the same thing like saying to a 5-year-old, don't ever go in the ocean. You'll die. If you go in the ocean, you will die. You'll do that because he's 5 years old, nobody's ever taught him to swim, and he most likely will drown before he learns a goddamn thing about the ocean. But if you're lucky, like I have been, or careful, or strangely protected from above, or all three put together, and then you're a bit smart and you sort of start to, then you can learn that I can swim. And, then you can learn, again, if you're lucky, oh, there are things that can definitely kill me in here very quickly and easily, and I'm just food for them. So I better watch myself, But it's a little bit, again, if we're going to the role-playing games, Call of the Cthulhu. A very good explanation. Call of the Cthulhu, you start to mess with shit that you don't belong there, you don't know how it works, and something could eat you. It's just,
and the thing might eat you simply because it's walking by, not because it actually wants to eat you.
Yep. And you will just lose your fucking mind. You will completely go insane, because all of a sudden, reality and what you thought was reality and what you firmly believed with absolute certainty, this is my desk, it's right here, and now your desk has mutated into a giant frog. And you're the only one that can see it, but the frog tells you that there is a hidden secret compartment in the house of your neighbor 3 doors down. And then, because everybody around you is telling you you're crazy, there's no giant frog that only appears to you. You say, but people, there is a fucking, in 3 doors down in the neighbor's garden, there's a... And they all look at you like, well, you're crazy. So you become slightly crazy, and then you break into the neighbor's house, and you dig in their garden, and lo and behold, you find exactly that thing that you have no way of knowing other than the giant frog that nobody else can see told you. What do you do with that? Other than lose your fucking mind. Or just put it aside and go, yep, there's a whole bunch of shit there that nobody knows how to deal with, and I've peeked into it, and I can't even bother discussing it with other people because, hey, they'll just assume I'm mad. So, I believe there's a lot of those things happen to quite a lot of people. I don't think there is a human being, there's very few, let's say, human beings around that haven't had something of some kind of supernatural nature happen to them that they themselves cannot explain. Like, oh yeah, I had this dream of X and then it happened. Or, oh, I knew Bob was going to call me and I haven't spoken to Bob in 15 years, but before I picked up the phone, that's Bob. Bob's calling me. And it was. We've all had stuff like that. So I think it's time for the stupid question segment. I think you're about an hour and 42 minutes into it, buddy. If you got a stupid question, I don't know why you've been holding
back. But if you do have them, post them.
Yeah. So, yeah. There's 19 people. We've chased off most of them with our role-playing and rambling talk. The fighting fantasy games, of course. Books, rather. The role,
those were really great. I really like there's the 4 series. Like when you're pursuing the Crown of Kings, I think it's called.
Oh, I don't know.
Starts out in the Shamutanti Hills.
Oh yeah. That's
then it goes to a black sand port.
That's not fighting fantasy, is it? Isn't that a White Dwarf one? Or no, White Wolf?
I remember the authors. What is it? Ian Livingstone and someone else.
Yeah, Ian Livingstone did plenty. They did Traveller ones. They did D&D ones. But the ones that you're talking about, they were like orange books, right? Or yellowish, I think.
No, they had this really great and slightly gruesome art on the cover.
Yeah.
And every like art inside the book, with a few exceptions, always looked slightly off.
Yeah.
And it was all very good, black and white ink and blind work.
Yeah, it was. I didn't like that kind of art. I like the neat art of the guys who did the D&D modules and stuff like that. So
speaking of that, the 2nd edition books have some amazing full color art in them.
They do, yeah. They have. I think
Xenos, your feet itch because you haven't washed them. Go take a shower, you filthy boy.
Yes, also athlete's foot. Just wrong. And Eddie Trains Bear says, I think EMF pollution pushes whatever that force is away. Yeah, I do think so. EMF pollution is a bad thing. Yeah.
There's actually now apps you can find on your phone for free that let you scan the area for basically for how many like radio frequencies are going through it, so that you can set up your own home router on a slightly different band, so you get better reception.
Fucking hell. I need to find
And
out how to do it.
the amount of radiation, just in your average home, is staggering.
I need to. I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to build a Faraday cage at least around my bed. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. I actually think that we should. I think everybody should have a Faraday. But I don't know how to. I think it's nothing complicated, but I'm not sure how
I
it
think
works.
you just need like you need conductive materials in a sphere or like in an enclosing shape, and it needs to be connected to a ground. I
Yeah,
think that's about it.
yeah. Funnily enough, they showed that on oh, what's that program? It was like 7 series of like what's it called? The one that starts out with the guy who was kidnapped by Muslims and then he's gonna become a terrorist, but he's a U.S. military guy.
What, the
Oh,
Burn Identity?
no, not the Born Identity. It's with the guy who that red-haired guy. Oh, fucking hell! And the woman is the one that did the Shakespeare film with Leonardo DiCaprio in like modern version. Cassie, what's her name? Can't remember now if that's the actor's name or the character. Homeland, that's what it's called.
Oh,
And it's like 7 series on Netflix. And after the third series, like one of the main guys dies. So it's like I stopped watching. It's like what the hell? And I thought, like, where do they go from here? And then I thought I had nothing better to do. Let me just start. And it was like, oh my god, it's really good. And in one of the scenes, they're in a hotel room and it's like in a foreign country or whatever. And it's like they don't want people listening in. It's like, okay, put the tent up, and they quickly put it. They don't explain it, but I knew exactly what it was. Like, yeah, that's what I do. Homeland, that's it. Yeah, Glenn. Very good. Glenn is still here. Of course he would be. Come on, ask your dumb questions, people. Can you integrate
can't like paper block 5G? It's one of the reasons I don't understand why they're trying to deploy it, because 5G is incredibly tricky and unreliable.
I know why they're trying to deploy it, because it's bandwidth and it allows you to fucking get that's what China is. It's a Chinese thing. They can scan your face. They know exactly where you. It's like ridiculous, man. The level of information that you
Mhm.
you.
I live in Israel, and here
See,
our
Glenn
equivalent
likes.
of the FBI basically knows everything about you,
Yeah,
because
I
like
know that.
everything here has a back door in it. There's no.
I know, but I assume everything has a back door in it, including my fridge. So I don't give a shit. No, I'm fucking serious. I really think that. I've been thinking that for many, many years. In fact, I wrote a blog post about it called, I think I called it like "No More Secrets" or the death of secrecy or something, because the NSA knows exactly what type of porn you prefer between the hours of 2 and 3 a.m. as opposed to 8 and 9 a.m. It's like fucking everybody's got a digital footprint that they could use for whatever, and everyone has it. So it's like, in my mind, it's like, who gives a shit? I mean, Larry King is an old bastard and I hope he dies soon, but if I'm gonna ever be interviewed by whatever, one of the, I don't know, say Jonathan Ross puts me on fucking TV like live to 3 billion people and goes, oh, by the way, we have one of your sex tapes. I'd be like, yeah, put it on. Check that form, huh? Look at that stamina. Look at the angle there, Yeah, that's me. Fuck you, I don't care. Like, what are you going to do? I would ask him, where's yours? Where's your sex tape? Come on, dude, put it. Come on. Let's see if you
Yeah,
measure
but the
up.
thing is, his sex tape happened on Epstein's Island.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't really give a shit. I mean, yeah, they can do stuff. They can harm. I'm not saying they can't fucking get to you or whatever, but you got to be a bit thick-skinned about it. Do you think that Faraday cage may block 5G as well? I don't know enough about this stuff. I know a guy who does know this stuff, and I need to get in touch with him again, but he's a bit hard to track down sometimes. Can you integrate a Faraday cage into the structure of the building? In the cement? Well, the building would have power cables and all sorts of other crap coming into it, so unless your building doesn't have electric cables coming into it, I would say you can, but then you're kind of defeating the purpose if you then have a power switch that's pops out into it. So
Yeah, the only thing I've actually, I'm answering here to a Heinz. I've found that while everything is known, you can make what's known about you to be somewhat more, how do you call it, smoky,
well,
diffuse.
LS16 has just said even the hole you leave by trying to be secretive gives them information. Exactly. It's one of the reasons I've never used Tor. I reckon the people who use Tor are even more looked into.
Tor is well known to being a honeypot. There's no.
It's like, why would you ever use that shit, you know?
But the thing is, what I do want to say is you can make your electronic footprint diffuse, not to the NSA and all those guys, but to commercial interests.
Yeah.
You can do that, which I do recommend doing because I mean, I'll give as an example. I mean, I'm interested in video games, computer hardware, etc., 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 and I don't get any Google ads for that stuff because I've intentionally made my digital footprint somewhat diffuse.
Yeah.
So there's some degree of privacy you can have,
well,
but not a lot.
One of the best ways of doing it is to just be so fucking all over the place that you blend in, you know? It's like, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, are you that interesting, you know? So, and the guys are talking about painting your whole house with like EMF shielding paint, also blocks cell reception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look, once I take over the Vatican and Venice, and I can impose my will upon the good part of the earth, I'm thinking there's probably it wouldn't be a bad thing to do away with cell phones, actually. Yes,
I'm pretty sure that if we do away with basically all wireless technology has to go. Keep it analog and wired.
Yeah, keep it analog and wired is not a bad idea. Now, admittedly, there's going to be some deaths because of that, because you could have a car crash or something, you can't get an ambulance there fast enough, people die. So there is that aspect of it, or whatever, kid gets kidnapped, doesn't have a phone, can't call you. So, there's a downside to it. But again, in a proper Catholic community, anybody who randomly kidnaps a kid probably wouldn't go 2 blocks before some good Catholic stopped him, possibly permanently. Wired or fired, literally at the stake. Well, looks like we may have another potential Kurgan immortal here, who follows the same ideology of tolerance and forbearance. Yeah. Armor shopping today and blender shopping tomorrow. Maybe tractor parts next week. Yep. It's scary though, you're talking to your phone, and this has happened, and I've checked with friends as well, like, I don't know, that you talk about something you've never had any interest in, like, oh, I'd really like to get lessons in opera singing. Opera singing is so great. I'd like to be an opera singer. I wonder if I could get some opera singing lessons. Fucking bet you, then the next week when I go on Facebook, there's going to be a fucking advert for opera singing. And my phone right now is technically not on, right? I mean, it's not switched off, but, I have to push a button to make it do anything. That happens without a doubt.
I get ads for cars, for toothpaste, for feminine hygiene products, and for international vacations.
Oh, there you go.
Which tell me that AdSense has no idea what to do with me.
Well, I confused one of the very first computers when I was going to school in Shakespeare's little village, Stratford-upon-Avon, which I ended up there as irony. God has a sense of humor, because I hated Shakespeare at school. And mostly because I couldn't understand what the hell he was saying. Because, it's that old English language, and didn't make sense to me. And then I ended up going there because my friend was there, and we wanted to like study together, whatever. So, but what the hell was I saying? I lost the train of thought. Are you frozen? I think we might have lost.
You froze for a moment.
Oh, okay. You're frozen still, but I can hear you.
Am I still frozen?
You're still frozen, but your audio's coming through.
That's weird.
Oh, there you are. Now I can see you. Now you're not frozen anymore. I forgot what the hell I was saying about Stratford on Avon. Oh, can't remember.
Something about Shakespeare being annoying because of his old ye olde English.
Yeah, I didn't understand. No, but what was it? I was thinking about something. I don't know. We're talking about burning people at the stake, which is always good. No, I don't know. It's gone.
Right, analog. Like go back to analog and wire technology.
Yeah, track.
This is also something I was thinking of. Part of the it's a bit to do, with Warhammer 40K, because they have, tech priests.
Yeah.
So I was thinking seriously that, one of the things that has made technology so bad nowadays is that all the people who nowadays work for, programming companies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that at least half of them should be monks. If you think of the sort of personality that a programmer has.
In my personal experience, I would say that's true of the good, serious programmers, of which there are only a few, as with anything, amongst the hordes of the unwashed masses.
I'm not talking about code monkeys. I'm talking about actual programmers.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about as well. No, maybe I wasn't. Like Marco, Marco's on Social Galactic. He's the guy of Castelia House. That guy, I think, would probably be a good monk. And I mean, we will tease the shit out of him because, like, get a wife, marry yourself up. I sent him a link once, I think, to prison brides, like women that are in jail that like want to find a husband when they get out. Like, come on, take your pick. And we just take the piss out of him. But I don't know, he'll probably die alone. I don't know. But he's a very nice guy.
The thing I was trying to get at was, I honestly think that we need technologically literate priests and monks, because we actually need people who are both pious and technologically capable, who can actually talk, about morality, God, ethics, and tech. Because our technology is completely unmoored from the spiritual and from the moral spheres.
I don't think that you can necessarily moor it to it. I think I think a lot of technology is essentially satanic. So
because there's no supervision.
I don't know. I think it's
also. This is actually a subject for a different stream.
Yeah, but I think it's actually intrinsic to the technology that you cannot make it moral. For example, take a gun, which is a very ancient technology. Is a gun moral, neutral, or not? In essence, intrinsically, a gun is wrong because its purpose is to kill potentially another human being. And killing is not the way of man. By the way, something that is also in Gorin no Sho. A man who killed over 60 people before he hit the age of 30, I think. It is, killing is always wrong. But now, on this flawed, broken planet, can you use a gun for, inverted commas, good? Yes, I absolutely believe you can. Or let's say a lesser evil, a much lesser evil. Yes, I believe you can. So in that respect, potentially, yes, you could say that technology is there anyway. We are a fallen world, and within the realms of this fallen world, you can possibly at least safeguard it, let's say, to some extent. So that's, I don't know. I would say that's possibly the way to look at it.
It's part of a much larger thing because there's the whole. It's a bit of a meme at this point, but that like a true good Christian never has any fun, and he's has no involvement in culture. And again, this is why I want this to be a different stream. It's just you can look around you and you can see the evil that has come out of Christian withdrawal from the culture.
Is that?
Because there is no counter voice in culture, technology, news, nothing. There's no. It's like the Christians allowed themselves to be completely silenced.
Oh, that
and they only talk to each other.
I agree, but then you have to ask yourself, were they Christians to begin with? Because it's a little bit like being sedevacantist, right? Oh, the church doesn't exist anymore, it's invisible. No. If you've got the internet and you spend 30 seconds researching Catholicism, you can find about sedevacantism pretty quick. What do those priests do? Are they online? Yeah, they've got a website. Yeah, you can go and buy their books online. They're there.
Just we've gotten to this point. We didn't get to this point, immediately.
Yeah.
There's been like it all traces back, of course, to that fat German monk.
Yeah.
Where religion just got pushed out and pushed out and pushed out and pushed out, and it became less and less part of life.
Okay, give me an example, because I'm trying to understand how you mean. So, okay, I'm thinking the internet. You've got unlimited amount of porn. You've got unlimited amount of debauchery. You've got unlimited amount of distraction.
Just as an example.
Yeah.
So here's, like a pro forma example is if you look at old books. A lot of them, like on the very first page, it's like, to the greater glory of God in this year of our Lord.
Yeah.
Even that doesn't exist anymore. Think of if you would put on a movie, and it would be like, and the part of the title screen would be, to the glory of God, in thanks of Him, sharing with us His ability to create. We present to you.
Let me tell you what would happen within 30 seconds of that thing appearing. Right? You're gonna say, right. Tomorrow, the Catholic Church, real, pops up. Suddenly, we've got like, I don't know, 500 million hardcore Catholics suddenly appear tomorrow. And we start to have the Catholic internet fighting the current internet. And they're going to start firing out all these, like, to the glory of God, this is this film. That film is not going to have anything salacious in it. That film is not going to have anything sexual in it. That film is not going to have anything virulently violent in it. And it's going to start off with praising God, and it's going to end off with praising God. Your average 4chan member, how many seconds is he going to look at that before he switches back to dwarf porn with interracial big black dicks?
That's not what I mean.
Okay.
What I mean is that the point we've reached at now, you can't get out of where like Rome isn't built in one day. We're not going to rebuild the Catholic Rome in one day either. So just slapping to the greater glory of God as something is not going to change anything. What I mean is that the mentality of you doing something creative and it in some way it involves God, it doesn't exist anymore. That mentality is completely gone.
I don't think it is completely gone. I think it is very few of us left, but I think that the way that that's going to change, I don't think it's going to be through technology. It's going to be, we will use technology to piggyback on, but it's like a couple of the guys in the stream now know what I'm talking about. It's going to be people physically forming meat space communities and creating little city states where the people in there, by hook or by crook, by law or not law, they will exclude and ostracize anybody who is not part of that community. And then it'll start to become big enough that it becomes a city state. And then it'll start to have actual fucking walls. And then it'll start to have rules that are like, if you want to be inside these walls, you behave this way. Otherwise, stay out there. And that's what's going to turn it around. I don't think it's turnable around by one simple trick with.
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
The point, and I'm probably not making it well. Let me try and make it this way. So there's a series of games that's very popular for a certain demographic, basically like older, what I call elder fat beards,
Okay.
old gamers like me. It's called the Dark Souls series.
Yes, I've heard of it. I've never played it, but yeah.
So the point I want to make about this game is that it's actually an explication of how do you call it? What's the name of the Japanese religion?
Shintoism.
It's basically an explication of Shinto Buddhist religion,
Yeah.
but with Western trappings.
Yeah.
The very mechanics of the game are about reincarnation. They are about an enlightened soul fighting against a broken world,
Yeah.
and aiming to transcend this meaningless suffering.
Yeah.
So the very mechanics of the game are theology. And we're getting this from heathens, and we're not getting this from actual Christians. The most powerful medium on earth, which has yet to be established by humans, which is video games, which I personally think, and I have reason to think this, is by orders of magnitude more powerful than movies or books.
Yeah, because it's like
And there's not a single Christian voice in this medium.
It's like comic books were in the 80s or 70s. It is the thing that actually affects culture. And something that I've always known that Vox has figured out not too long ago, and that's why he's now doing comic books. So yeah, I agree with you. There should definitely be, I think somebody mentioned a game called Destiny, that's kind of like that. That's got a sort of a Christian theme to it. I've never played the game. I don't know anything about it other than what these guys that I know told me. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. There should definitely, I don't know the other game called, what is it? Catholic Kings or something, I don't know. Or Crusader Kings. I don't know if that's got any elements of that in it.
It used to, but of course the company is in the process of being converged, so of course
I remember
all
I know about that game is like somebody sent me a screenshot, said this is what it would look like if the Kurgan becomes emperor or plays Crusader Kings, and it was like the whole world was Catholic except for like a couple of little bits that had survived in the corners. It's like it's quite funny.
And the point I was trying to get at, and I wasn't thinking very well, was we've reached this point because at some point in the past, Christians decided to, and repeatedly decided to retreat from culture and technology.
Yeah.
Because we constantly ceded ground.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. But
and this is something I've been finding out even here in Israel. It's like, if people ask me, I don't go out, announcing it, but when people ask me what my religion is, I tell them Christian Catholic.
Yeah.
And the response is surprised or pathetic or whatever it would give you, but there's never any pushback. There's never any, it doesn't bother anyone. There's no reason for us to be quiet about what we are.
No, there isn't. There never has been.
And that's...
And in fact, if and when you do get a little bit of pushback, it's only online. In face-to-face world, people just shrink away, if anything. They, some of the guys I work with, they know I've written the books that I've written. They've seen them. They won't talk about it because it's it's personal, whatever. And, I make no bones about it. It's like somebody asked, what, when the priest came over or whatever, I'm not going to say too much about that, but there's, theoretically, if a priest does a mass in certain conditions, it might not be, legal or whatever, and one of the guys said, but would you condone that sort of behavior, if priests suddenly started doing masses against lockdown or whatever, of course, absolutely, I would condone that. Of course, I would try and help people that are doing that, or, shout out, would be all for it. But that's breaking the law. And my instant response was well, under Nazi Germany, it was legal to shoot Jews. I don't give a crap about the law, never have, never will. I give a shit about justice. And the comment back, nothing, was like, oh yeah, you're right. Yes, I am. You know, that's the thing. If you actually push back, had a little online pushback, like my friend Todd, I need to finish that book, I need to do that cover. He's like friends with this lady, whatever. Said, no, she's pretty cool. You should have her on your stream, whatever. And I talked to her for a bit. She seems all right. Turns out she's a full-blown Gnostic. I was like, go away. You're a liar. I want nothing to do with you. And then she tries to use scripture to, like, you know, but I know. I'm like, the devil can quote scripture. You know, bugger off. Go burn. And I don't. You know, I don't give these people any quarter or any mercy. No, that time has passed. That was the Vatican II great-grandfathers that were weak. We are not such men. So absolutely, you're right. We need to push back. Elsa says, somebody here said something totally retarded. Yeah, Rick here, who says, we should not surf on the web, but baptize in the web. No. That's completely retarded on every level and wrong. Baptism has to be absolutely in person, and even if you're making a jokes about baptize in the web, that essentially makes you a Satanist as far as I'm concerned with that comment, because you're saying that you're getting baptized in the internet. It's essentially raw sewage, most of it. Hugh and Bear says, my inclination and occupation are not conducive to socializing as it is, and socialization would have led me further into Lutheranism. I live in Lutheranistan. Okay, I'm not sure where you live exactly, but
Germany?
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe, you know, the thing, yeah, Haynes, yeah, the thing, I don't disagree with you that you can use the web of the enemy to do good things, but you have to understand it is a creation of the enemy. The fact that you're using enemy tools to blow up his factories, great. Of course, that's what you should do. You know, that's why I'm still on Facebook. Because, like, no, fuck you. I'm going to make you kick me out, bitch. And I'm going to keep, like, planting seeds of tormentation to everybody else that's still on it. You know, sure, use their own infrastructure, if you want to call it that. That's the nature of the beast. But so yeah, and you can find a lot of cool stuff on the internet, but the thing is not, I don't believe that you can fix things by changing the exterior. You have to change the interior. You have to decide what you're going to let in. You have to decide that, oh well, maybe I'll go read some catechism instead of the usual dwarf porn, you know, or whatever you're into. It's an internal change. It's you that has to alter what you're gonna spend your time, money, effort on, you know. So it's not really up to anybody else. It's up to you. Dissenting opinions incoming. Horse mumbler. If a gun is immoral, a sword must be more so, for the former may be used for hunting, and the latter is purely a man-killer. And yet did not he himself say he came not to bring peace, but a sword? Yes, he did. The rifle itself has no moral status, since it has no will of its own. Naturally, it may be used by evil men for evil purposes, but there are more good men than evil. No, there are not. Your maths is off there. And while the latter cannot be persuaded to the path of righteousness by propaganda, they can certainly be corrected by good men with rifles. Jeff Cooper, Art of the Rifle. Jeff Cooper was an American and a bit of a blackguard. And yeah, he said some clever things about guns, about 5 of them, and nothing new particularly. The point that I was making is not that the gun itself is good or evil. That's idiotic. A gun is an inanimate object and is no more good and evil than this bit of kitchen roll that's sitting here. The point is the intrinsic, okay, what is the intrinsic nature of this? Why did this get built? To wipe up spills, okay, to put under my glass when I drink my sake or whatever. That's the nature of that thing. So you could say, well, it has a good purpose. Its intention is to keep things clean, right? Calculator. What's the intention of this? Again, to keep accurate order of things. So you could say it is a good tool, Okay, yes, you can use this to calculate the exact volume of gas that you need in the chamber to get rid of some unpleasant people that you don't like, but that's you, that's not the calculator. The intention of the calculator is to add order. So again, not a bad thing intrinsically. The nature of a weapon is to kill or wound. That is its purpose. It doesn't matter if it's a sword, a rifle. What do you use a rifle for? You don't use it to build a house. You use it to kill something. It doesn't matter if it's a rabbit, your neighbor, or your entire family because you lost your shit. The nature of the weapon, the intent of it is to kill or wound or harm. Now, is there a need to kill, wound, or harm in heaven? After final judgment, when everybody that's here is either in heaven or in hell, right? If you're now in heaven, do you need swords in heaven? And if you do, would you need swords in heaven for anybody else that's in heaven? Or would you need swords in heaven to do the next step of the process, which might well be to go out and deal with pocket hells, for all I know, okay? There's absolutely no need for any weapon in heaven. Why would there be? It's heaven. It's perfection. You and everybody else there is their ultimate perfect thing. So that's my point.
I'm going to add something onto that. If you look in general in Catholic thought, as it were, intention is essential. You are actually supposed to compose your intention before praying.
Yeah.
You are supposed to start your day with intentionally thinking about what you're going to do first, to think about God, to think about, Our Lady too. Your intention and your mind are supposed to be focused on, God, your duty, etc. So this ties to what, Kurgan has been railing about for years now, probably, about, two-dimensional thinking or binary thinking.
Yeah.
This is part of how we have been made to think like machines, that we have started, we discount intent.
Yes. And intent is everything. In the spiritual world, intent is the only thing that matters. That is why, precisely, I've said this, I think I may even put it in, I don't know if it's in one of the books or not, but one of the things that first impacted me that I learned about the spiritual realm is how subjective it is. And I mean subjective in inverted commas, because the way we use the word subjective, it essentially means selfish, right? Oh, it's subjective, it's solipsistic, it's what matters to me. And that's all selfish world, but you've been taught to train into thinking that subjectivism is selfishness. But in the spiritual realm, it's absolutely not. In the spiritual realm, everything is subjective because everything and everyone in it is 1000% unique. There is absolutely no way that I can apply whatever I am to what you are. You've got completely different dimensions. You've got completely different flaws. You've got completely different virtues. The way that you will get from A to B might be ideologically or intentionally the same, but it'll be unique to you as it will be unique to me. So the whole point of Protestantism was to make you into a little machine that has to do it this way and only this way, otherwise it's wrong. And that's not how Catholicism works, and that's not how reality works. And that is why I've always said martial arts is a very close thing to the spiritual, because you can't lie, you can't cheat, you can pretend as much as you want, but when that punch hits your face, you get a truth sensation that you cannot deny. And it pervades your whole face. In fact, sometimes it splashes onto other people as well and gives them a little bit of truth that they cannot deny because they have to wash it off. That is how things really work. And the guy that splashed your nose is not necessarily your enemy. He might be your best friend. And the fact that he splashed your nose is nothing that you'll hold against him for even a second. Even while he's breaking your nose, all you can think of is, damn, he's teaching me and I'm so slow. And I've had that personal experience, so I can tell you that for a fact. It's not about whether you've got your nose broken or not. That's not what's important. The intent is what's important. I've had a guy break my nose so that I, to this day, cannot breathe properly. I held no ill will towards him. I actually liked the guy. He was one of the fairest judges. He was one of the hardest fighters, built like a brick shithouse. And he broke my nose intentionally because it was the week before graduation and we're going hard. Fuck it, it's not a game. And he zapped me. Didn't give me any fucking warning and he broke my nose. And of course, why would he give me any warning? Because it's as real to a fight as you're going to get. You know, so fine. And I didn't quit. I didn't slow down. I sped up. With my broken nose, I carried on because fuck, he might do it again, you know. That guy's a cool guy. The big German in Japan who tried to take my head off because of his own ego, if the Japanese guy had let me go, I might have killed that guy. I wouldn't have stopped until they physically removed me from his face. So I don't know what would have happened. But I would have definitely hurt him bad at the very least. And that was because his intention was unclean. It had nothing to do with what... He didn't touch me. He actually didn't touch me. He missed me. So intent is everything. And to answer Rick here, who's our special person today, spelled with a TH, he says it was a very dumb joke. Yes, it was. But why is the internet bad? Babel, when does technology become bad? Well, what is the intent of the internet? Now, the original intent by the guy who invented it, who by the way is not Al Gore, might well have been, originally actually was a military intent. So the intent of the original internet was, again, to kill people and make it more efficient. So that's its origin. Then it sort of grew out of that, and it may have been free flow of information. Sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds idyllic, doesn't it? Don't you just want to have free information about everything? Is it? Because given human nature, what do you think that 90% of that information is going to turn out to be?
This has to be one of the most flagrant misuses of the word information. Because they try to say, that porn is information, when it evidently is not information. It's not informing you about anything.
Well,
you are not receiving any real data when it comes to porn.
No, I disagree. It is absolutely informing you on what level of degeneracy you can step yourself down to. But it is absolutely giving you information. And that's exactly my point.
I used to think that you could describe the internet as basically a massive whorehouse that has a few pubs and warehouses and shop fronts around it, and then there's a few tiny libraries behind around that, and a few billboards around that. That's basically the shape of the internet.
Essentially, that's not incorrect. And you know what? The thing is, people say porn. To a certain extent, porn has pushed the technological limit because you want to get the 4 HD whole full view penetration in 3D, then you need more bandwidth, and that's pushed the internet to do great things and live video and streams, whatever. But I don't actually think porn is even the worst of it. Physical porn, watching people fucking orgies, whatever. I don't think that is the most destructive thing on the internet. Don't get me wrong, it certainly desensitizes you to a whole bunch of things that you shouldn't be desensitized to. It corrupts you at a very physical level. It has a lot of negative shit, don't get me wrong. But it's not the porn itself that I think is the real evil. As usual, true evil is like the silent fog fart of a banker. You can't see it. You can only smell it in between the stale taste of his fucking cucumber sandwich, which you can't tell, is it his fart or is it his sandwich? That's true evil. That's how true evil works. And it is the general degrading of intelligence, the general degrading of information that is supposed to be enlightening, the general degrading of language, the general degrading of thought. I mean, again, that idiotic atheist theory that a million monkeys on a million typewriters will write Shakespeare. No, we know for a fact now, we've had the internet for a good 30 years, that a billion monkeys fucking typing away on keyboards 24/7 for 30 years will produce absolutely fuck all. They will produce nothing that even begins to approach Dante or Shakespeare or any of those guys. Because here we are, monkeys, we're all just clicking and chomping away like retards. So no, the degradation, yes, there's a lot of porn, but porn is a specific sin. I would suggest that it's somewhat limited in its it's not, because it spreads to other things, but the degradation of the quality of discourse, that's what is the bad thing.
Yeah. I know for a fact that, as a small example, my memory is not even a fragment of what it used to be when I was a kid or teenager, because I just don't need to remember anything anymore.
Yeah, because it's in your phone, it's on your internet, it's on the, yeah. Plenty of... Rural Minnesota. Oh, that's worse than Germany. I have been to Minnesota, and not very rural, but somewhat rural part of it. And I believe I described Minnesota then, and I still think of it now, as a grey place with grey people in a grey fog, in a grey land that do grey things in a grey time of day, which is all day. That's pretty much Minnesota. That's how I described it then, and still think that. So, oh, horse mumbler, you might be my sniper, but you're a theoretical autist. Can either creation of the structure and therefore tools of this purpose be inherently moral? Oh, you're not getting. Are you German? Huh? Are you? I'm not kidding now, horse mumbler. You must be German. I'm detecting some Germanic influence there. Is not the enemy's promise neither but corruption? Oh. You see, you must be a German to think that you can have inherently immoral tools. That's... You don't get it. There are so many awful corners of the internet, and then there are many, 90% is consumerism nonsense. I don't live in heaven, but in a... Yes, horse mumbler, answer my question. Are you German? Because then I don't need to waste any more time on you. Once I know you're German, I understand. You're a mental deficient who cannot think properly.
So in the future coordinate, is there going to be I propose this law, all Germans are banned eternally from practicing theology.
No. I have got nothing against the Germans. I just want them to build a nice big wall all around their Germany and stay there. I don't want them to go out. They need a special pass if they want to get out of their Germany. Those guys are just... Horse mumbler just doesn't get it. You do not understand.
They're allowed to learn engineering and brew beer.
Yeah, I don't drink much beer, so whatever, And their engineering, no, I'm sorry, but I completely disagree with you on that. Their engineering is horrific. I have worked with Germans, and they are... It is just retarded. They are an absolute bunch of retards, and they just so cretinous in their way that eventually they get something to somehow work. To change the spark plugs on a Volkswagen, you have to remove 3 bits of thing and half the fucking engine. In a Japanese car, you just put in the socket, whoop, and it's out. You change your spark plug. No, it's... And the way they do things on construction sites, it's even worse. Honest to God, I would honestly, I would rather work with illiterate Africans than with Germans. Not even a joke. Not even a joke. No, you're not trying to understand. Listen, if you want to understand. Okay, let me just horse mumble. We're just going to do a little. He's a mod here. That's terrible. We need to just dissect him a little bit. So let's just do. So he's written about his dissenting opinion about the tools and blah, blah, blah. Let's pick up. The nature of all tools is the amplification of power. I believe that this is a quote from this Jeff Cooper, maybe? I don't know. Or maybe it's his own statement. To be magnifiers of free will. The intent of a weapon is to destroy, and the intent of the tools that built the Tower of Babel was construction. And how does that invalidate a single word of what I said? Can either creation or destruction, and therefore tools of those purposes, be inherently immoral when both are his domain? You're a retard. Nobody's talking about the tools and creation or destruction and the tools for the creation or destruction. We're talking about intent. Intent. Get yourself a dictionary, look it up. We're not talking about the tools or what they're doing. We're talking about the intent of the design of the tool. So if you design a hammer, what is the intent? Supposedly building, but you can use a hammer to destroy. So the intent of the nature of what you're building has an intent to it. That intent can be good or bad. We do not live in heaven, but in a fallen world where good and ill are both to be constructed and destroyed by his will and corrupted by the wicked. No, you're a retard. First of all, we live in a fallen world and where good and ill are both to be constructed and destroyed by his will. It's not just his will that's doing it. God doesn't create evil on purpose. Like, what are you doing? He's given people free will. He's given his angels free will. He didn't create evil. He created free will. The evil was done by them. You're a Celt. That explains it. Might not be a German. The Celts only come in two kinds. The funny, good to have a drink with kind. There are lefties. And not so funny, not so good to have a drink with, who think like Germans. All your statements were not attributed to another. There you go. So your initial statement was a bit retarded because you're saying the nature of all tools is the amplification of power to magnifiers of free will. The intent of a weapon is to destroy, and the intent of the tools that built the Tower of Babel was construction. Exactly. So the intent of a weapon is to do harm. The intent of a tool of construction is to build. Now, you can build a weapon with the tool that is used to build. The intent of the tool, or the intent behind the tool that builds, is positive. The intent behind the tool that is destroyer is negative. And yes, you can then use it whichever way you want, but Germany is equal to Bertaria. Unicorn. That's from Unicorn Cupcake. I don't know who that is. Might be one of the Gammas, but that's a funny name and a funny comment. Anyway.
What's his face? Oh, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, Bertaria is like Owen's, I don't know, little cult land or whatever. Which,
Owen's a German, Owen says himself that he's a German peasant.
Well, he is also a German, as I said in my Inquisition, he is a German and a Jew. He is both.
What?
And therefore he has perfected the art of grappling. Yeah.
Don't they cancel out?
Well, Hitler was a Jew, Yeah.
Well, I mean, he is sort of short and brown-haired, so...
Well, Hitler...
And very neurotic.
Try and find out about the history of Hitler. It's very interesting. The town where he was from has been eradicated from the earth. It's almost impossible to find, really well-confirmed things about Hitler. But it appears that his father was possibly half Jewish. and may have been the illegitimate son of a Jewish guy that banged his mother, who was, I think, a servant in the home. That's one of the things. The other thing that the people of the country you live in don't like to be known is that Hitler had the Iron Cross for bravery, because in the First World War he was a messenger and he ran in front of the machine guns to deliver a message. So he wasn't a coward, and he got the Iron Cross. Although they're saying, oh well, he kind of pushed for it, and then they gave it to him. Okay. He was that kind of guy who would push for it. You could tell he's one of the guys who believed in that sort of thing. I mean, I wouldn't give a crap, but but guess who? Apparently, the guy who gave him the Iron Cross, his superior, was a Jew. And I haven't looked into this enough to make absolutely sure for myself, but it's interesting.
As much as you might joke about these sort of things, I remember from the office of the battalion commander I used to work for, his shelf had a whole bunch of basically World War II German war manuals. A lot of the IDF doctrines of war are based on the Blitzkrieg, because Israel is so small, and fighting defensively is not an option.
Nope.
Additionally, when Israel was first founded, and for many years onwards, German was the technical language used in the Technion, basically in the engineering school up in Haifa.
That's so weird.
It's just, the whole. And one of the things that really makes should give you pause about the whole 6 million is the way the Israeli government treats survivors.
Oh.
Now, obviously there was a destruction of European Jewry.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the Israeli government, and this is one of those things that's it's one of those things that Israeli journalists love to use to beat the government over the head with. They basically treat survivors as scum.
What?
Yeah. Like all the property that all the property and money that Israel receives from Germany, which is supposed to go to the survivors, goes straight to the government coffers. Very little of it goes to the actual survivors.
But why? What's the reason behind that?
Well, one, it's a government, and governments behave like governments.
Yeah.
There's there's nothing really to say about that much, but anybody with two brain cells to rub together knows that the official story is a lie.
Yes.
And the question stands then: how many of the survivors who give testimony to what they endured in the concentration camps, you have to ask yourself, how many of them really were in a prison or concentration camp, and how many of them are actors?
I never asked myself that question, but that David Aaron guy put some numbers to it, and I think the actual number of Jews killed in concentration camps, according to him, and I'm speaking well under correction, because it's, to be honest with you, it's not a topic that interests me that much. It has become a little bit more interest more recently, just because of the statistics of it, to be honest. But I know a shitload of evil shit went on, and there's no doubt that happened. But whether it was 6 million, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, to a certain extent, it doesn't make that much difference in terms of what interests me about the so-called Holocaust and all that. It was never about the Jews or whether the gypsies or the gays or whatever it was. To me, what was interesting was, how does a whole fucking nation become party to that sort of behavior that the Nazis engaged in, without shadow of a doubt? Now, there is an element of it which I am aware, but I find difficult to believe to a certain extent, is the Nazis that knew what was going on, the Nazis that were trying to exterminate Jews and everybody else, they knew that they were doing this, but it was going to be hidden. If you've read the book Fatherland, or the little miniseries with Rutger Hauer, where Germany wins the war, and Rutger Hauer is like a Nazi officer who's got a watch that his dad gave him, but the name on the back of the watch is like Rosenthal or something, and he's like, the fuck does this watch come from, really? And then he starts to go through the archives, and he finds out about the Holocaust, and fuck, we did this? Like, he didn't know. It's like, no, of course, we Germans rule the world because we're the best, and this is like set in 1960s, and Germany's won the war and sort of won the world type of thing. So there was an element of what they were doing that was absolutely being hidden from the average German. But how long could you hide that stuff for? You know what I mean? That level of stuff that they did has to have leaked out, and there has to have been a hatred for Jews that was endemic to the whole population. And as a kid, I never understood that. I just couldn't get my head around, like, what the fuck would make people do that? A whole nation, not just like 2 or 3 guys, And as I get older, I'm starting to understand it a bit better, and I'm starting to understand, oh, well, wait a minute. If we can, let's say that we can absolutely prove tomorrow that not only was there massive fraud in the Trump election, not only did 9/11 happen not the way they say it happened, but it was bombed from the inside, not only was a whole bunch of other shit happening, and it all happened because of people from Mossad. Wait, what's Mossad? Oh, wait, so these Jewish guys who've got like their own nation, wait, and they created 2 world wars to create that nation, and then now they actually run America like their little lapdog, and they make them do all this horrific shit and bomb the Arabs because, fuck, it's all being controlled by Jews. Let's say that happens tomorrow. That thought becomes a reality in your head. From that moment on, you're like, I want nothing to do with fucking Jews. You can sort of see, and keep in mind that now we have a bit of an understanding of propaganda and how things work and whatever. But that doesn't mean that the propaganda that the Nazis used was necessarily a lie. Again, the financing of Germany to start wars being done by essentially a couple of big Jewish banking families, there's no question that happened. There's no question that it was essentially Jews that caused the Russian Revolution. So,
and it's never those fuckers who pay the price.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your average Joe Jew who just, has a store down the road who pays the price for their shenanigans.
But that's always the case regardless, isn't it? Whether you're Catholic, Jew, Muslim, or whatever, it's never the fucking Pope that gets crucified. It's some little Catholic guy in Iraq that gets his head chopped off because he won't denounce Jesus. That's how it works. That's just life. But
I'm thinking also, because when in the yeshiva is basically a Jewish seminar. So I recall there was a whole bunch of books which I was reading back at the time, and I remember if you're reading books like from 50 something until 70 something, it was never the Shoah or the Holocaust. It was the destruction of European Jewry. That's what it was called. It wasn't called. It didn't have like the proper name yet.
Yeah.
And most of it, lamented about, the loss of, pious men, and it's from religious people, so that's what they cared about. But if you look at my own father's family, I think only 2 branches survived Second World War, and one branch because, like my crazy great grandfather decided that doing a business venture in South Africa is a mighty fine idea, and that's why that branch survived.
Yeah.
And the other branch went to the United States.
Yeah.
So it's like entire families got snipped because of World War I and II.
Yeah.
And it's like the real tragedy of what happened is sort of glossed over, and instead this entirely false construct of the Holocaust was sort of built over it.
Yeah, Ever Change Bear makes quite a funny, dark humor point. Says, perhaps because they didn't contribute to the Great Sacrifice, they were pushing for 7 million. Yeah. Horse Mumbler is truly an autist. You can build for evil and destroy for good, so how is it destructive intent necessarily worse than intent to build? Your comment is retarded. Maths, that's how. Basic maths. If you build something that has with the intention to destroy things, what do you think it's most likely going to be used for? Moron. I don't think you should have a sniper rifle. It's too much of a responsibility for you. Although I suppose you want the binary thinker when you're telling him what to shoot and what not to shoot, but just a coincidence. Okay, guys, we've been going almost 3 hours, so I'm cooked. And we're supposed to be about role-playing games, damn it. And we never got to talk about Traveller and the beautiful things that happened with spaceship misjumps.
Basically like a teleport gone wrong now.
Yeah, it was. Oh, but we had some great adventures. I think Across the Bright Face was one of the coolest ones, where you basically land on this planet and you have to like fucking your spaceship.
Most of what I've heard about Traveller is actually about the character creation system.
Oh yeah, it kills you.
Which apparently was you could die in it, but the interesting thing was you could like say, I want to be a Marine in the Imperial Navy, and then you roll and you're an accountant or something like that.
You get drafted somewhere else, yeah. So there's the draft. So if you miss your throw for like gaining to what you want, you roll a draft and you like might not get into any of the service, and then you are an other. And the other was basically a euphemism for smugglers and scum of the earth. That, because really Mark Miller, you can sort of see his thinking. He was literally thinking, well, in a galactic society, who counts? Who actually has a say in what really happens? Military people, merchants, or fucking criminals. That's really all you got to play with here. Either you're a rich noble, some military man that has done some stuff, a merchant, or a criminal. Everybody else is just regular citizens, But which is a fair, I suppose, comment to a certain extent. Thank you. Love you, Kurgan, my twin flame. Aw. And Woolly Ram. Aw. Dances with logos. But yeah, so no, Traveller was great. But the funny thing about Across the Bright Face was that basically what happens is you misjump. That's how the adventure starts. Or at least that's how our referee started it. And you're around this planet that's only got like a little scout base. And so you manage to land your ship there, but like your ship's like hyperspace drive is like buggered and you can't fix it. You don't have enough skills. But the guys on the scout base, they say like, yeah, we can fix this, but we need a survey of the planet. And it's cold out there and you don't really want to do it. So how about we fix your ship? We give you an ATV with all full the food and stuff, and you guys go around the equator of this sucker and you survey it for us, and we'll call it quits. And you're kind of like, what if we say no? Well, then get the fuck out and freeze in the cold. Good luck. So it was sort of like, and what if we just at gunpoint? Now we got guns too, and there's more of us. Damn it. So we did this, and you find alien artifacts. There's a whole bunch of like adventure shit that happens, and we did all that. Some of it hilarious, some of it funny. Like, wait, ATVs float, right? Yeah, they float. Okay, so we'll just go in the ocean. That's a quick path. What about current? Oh well, just keep spinning the wheels, man. How much fuel have we got? It uses water, so it's fine. That sort of thing. And then we get back to we finally finished the circumnavigation, which went on for like, we played this game for weeks because the DM was like counting off the days, and it takes like 218 days or whatever. That's, depending on how fast you travel. And we skipped some day, like weeks at the time, because we're like, no, we're just driving. It's a desert. fuck all happens. No real random encounter. So eventually we get back to the base and we're like, okay, cool. We've done the survey. Yeah, a bit of a problem about that thing. We don't quite have all the parts. It's like, you better have the parts because we don't care if there's more of you. We're going to kill you all now. We know how to murder all sorts of shit now after this little adventure. Oh, no, okay, we fix it. But like the way they fixed it, I can't remember the details. Let's just say we got the part into the ship and it was kind of working, but we got out of there real fast because I can't remember if I think that's what it was. We'd stolen some alien artifacts that we were supposed to give them anything we find, but we'd like hidden it and we're like, and they figured out that the box that we'd left there was empty and whatever. So it was like, oh shit, but we've got no fuel because the thing was empty from the mist jump. So we quickly refueled just from the ocean on the other side of the planet because, you know, they only had like little ships, nothing really big. We left before them, so we're kind of going to get away with it. Fuel scoop up some random water from the ocean, which of course is unfiltered, what they call impure fuel, which has a tiny chance of making you misjump. So we arrived on this planet because we misjumped. We've did 200 a fucking year of going around it and getting frozen, bitten by aliens, all sorts of shit. We get the ship, we hyperspace, and we misjump.
I misjump.
That's just. And then when we misjump in like some random area of space where there was hardly any ships, we nearly starved and died, and we just right at the end get picked up by somebody. Oh no, we found them. And of course enough time has now passed because a misjump, you know, it's like a week for you or whatever because you're in hyperspace, but in reality a misjump could have been 6 months, you know, so a long time had passed. Oh wait, we know this transponder, says the Imperium ship that comes to rescue us. You're the guys that stole alien artifacts from our Imperial base on Mithril. So you're going straight to the next module, Prison Planet. It was quite funny how that all worked out, really. Yeah.
Beautiful when those things happen.
Oh, horse mumbler. I can't teach you to think in 3 dimensions, dude. You're just gonna have to find a way. And if you're Irish, wait, Celt, is that Irish? Or that possibly is. Aren't the Basque also Celts?
I honestly don't know.
I think there might be, and the Basques are a hard-headed people. Don't you want your snipers actively learning your way and understanding of things? No. First of all, because it's impossible. You will just pretty much never get there. Not simply bringing their own and leaving them concealed. No, I don't care for your thoughts. I don't want them if you're my sniper. You simply have to pull the trigger at what I tell you to pull the trigger at. That's it. I don't care about your thoughts, concern, ideologies. None of. You are to hit the target and shoot at the target I tell you. That's it. That's the job. So it's not a democracy. I don't know where you got that random idea that we're equals. Well, we're not. If you're an immortal, you're a little soldier in my empire. That's it. There isn't anything to do, dude. You know, I've explained it. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like trying to tell a guy how to, I don't know.
I think it's a matter of time. You need to rub up against like a 3-dimensional thinking for a while, and then it sort of starts to stick.
Yeah, but I genuinely don't know how to explain this better to this guy. I mean, what we're talking about here is intent matters. If you don't understand that intent matters, I don't know how to make you understand that, honestly. And you're getting stuck on the tool that the intent builds. It's irrelevant. It can be a calculator, it can be a toothpick, it can be an atom bomb. It's the intent. And certain objects clearly have an intent behind them that is of a nature. So, I don't know how else to explain it to you, man. I'm getting frustrated at the thought that I've repeated this about 5 times and you still don't get it. I don't know. Maybe Woolly Ram has a thought on the point.
The right thing to say this year, we're not talking about the intent of the person creating the shovel at this moment. We're talking about the intent that is imprinted in the object that's being made.
Exactly.
Like the pattern implies intent.
Yes.
That's what we mean. We don't mean that, whoever sat down to make a gun or a sword is thinking, aha, I am now going to make an object that'll kill people. That's not the intent we're talking about. That sort of intent is important, but it's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't know if Woolly Ram has helped you understand this better. And you see, there's a reason why fire only as directed, because then any mistake you make is not your mistake, it's my mistake. And that's how I'd like it. Now, if and when a sniper becomes intelligent enough that I deem that he may occasionally choose when to pull the trigger on his own, I'll let him know. But you've got to keep in mind there's guys in here that are actively planning and working their way towards buying land in areas that they didn't pick to form Catholic communities. Those guys are doing shit purely not because I told them to, but because they reckon that that's what they want to do. Those guys are showing a level of dedication and intent that goes well beyond anything in the digital world. So, these are people that are physically willing to move country, spend their own money in purchasing the property that will be their property. I'm not a Bertaria guy who's just give me your money and I'll buy a piece of land and maybe I'll let you on. No, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is I'm telling people, look, there's some people here, there are some people there. There is a community that's building up here, and these guys are going out there and doing their own thing. That is a dedication that then tells me, okay, this guy I can trust to do certain things. At the moment, you're a mod on a digital channel that I expect to be wiped out any second. So, sort of commensurate with that responsibility, put it that way. But I'm glad you're taking this the right way, and let us know if what Woolly Ram explained has made a difference, because everything he said makes perfect sense. I thought it was patently obvious, but I guess he's better at explaining stuff than I am. That's why he's got that beard. He's more patient. As soon as I start to itch a little bit, off it goes. But okay, guys, it has been literally 3 minutes to 3 hours. So I don't actually think I heard. I need to check if my wife and kids have come back. They must have by now, but I didn't hear them. They must have been asleep, so she probably just quietly snuck them upstairs. Okay, I will say good night to you all. As usual, when we're speaking to Rambling Woolly Ram, I blame him, of course, although I'm doing 90% of the
work. Rambling Woolly, yeah. It's winter and I'm starting to develop a shaggier cover.
We strayed from the topic massively. Okay, good. He says that what you said makes sense and he'll listen back anyway. All right. Short streams are nice here and then. Hoping for a long one soon, though. Very good. We got a funny little cockerel in the house. He's got an avatar of what looks like a chicken, a rooster. Oh, that reminds me. I need to check whether I was in the charge zone of London. They've got this this area of London where if you drive through there, then you have to pay a congestion charge. And it's like, fuck, I don't know, my GPS thing is set to not put me through that, but sometimes it just ignores it, goes through and whatever. And it's like, man, I haven't taken this road before. That looks too built up. I'm probably in that. And then there's a sign that says congestion zone, and of course a bus just blocks it off, so I can't see it. And sometimes they have this sign to tell you a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road, and then you have another sign when it happens. But I couldn't read the sign, so I didn't know if it was entering it or if it was telling me about it, and then I went around it. I don't know. So I thought, no, I better check some landmarks, find out where I am, so when I get home I find out if I have to pay or not. And of course, I look around, and what's the first thing I see outside to my right? Big letters like this. A pub called The Famous Cock. I'm not joking, I swear to God. I was like, well, I'm going to remember that one. Again, it sounded a little bit like God telling me a little joke, saying, well, you lost yourself, did you, you famous dick? Here you go. So, yeah. Oh, fuck. Oh, good. Oh, that's good. Well accepted. Horse Mumbler, you've redeemed yourself with that last comment. Thank you both for streaming. It's been great. Good night and God bless you, the High Priestess and the Immortal. Yes. Thank you all. And there's some very loyal, quiet boys that have been in here. And it was nice to see Glenn, which I haven't spoken to in a few years. But yeah, good. Cool. I didn't know that people I used to know in real life are following the stream. Probably thinking I'm completely insane. But then they always did think that. They're just confirming it. Anyway, good night, everybody. Thank you, my
Good night.
Catholic monk in Jerusalem. Good night.